I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Puslinch on November 17th, 2021. I'll start with roll call. Councillor Sapoulis.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Bulmer.
Present.
Councillor Goyda.
Present.
All right, now we'll have our moment of reflection. That concludes our moment of reflection. Ms. White Fox, could you read out the resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please?
Council approves the November 17th, 2021 operating budget agenda as circulated.
And move it for that, please. Councillor Sapoulis, seconded by Councillor Bulmer. Thank you. Yep, all in favor. Councillor Sapoulis.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Councillor Bulmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Okay, disclosure of pecuniary interests and general nature thereof today.
I have one.
Okay,
I have, yeah, as well.
I'll go Councillor Bulmer first.
Items 7.1 and 8.1.2 regarding Sunrise Therapeutic Writing Center. The township's code of conduct indicates that a member shall not advance the private interest of a friend. And since I'm listed as a advisor to Sunrise, a reasonable person would consider that I'm a friend of Sunrise. And item 8.12 regarding the grant application for the Friends of Mill Creek. I host the website and pay for the domain name for that organization's website.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Councillor Goyda.
So I am declaring for item also 7.1 and part of 8.12 regarding the Sunrise Therapeutic. And I am declaring a pecuniary interest because I am a member of the board of directors. And as such, I will refrain from any discussion and decisions in regards to the grant application specific to Sunrise.
Sorry, Councillor Goyda, you were a little quiet. Was there another item, 7 point something?
7.1, which is the grant application for Sunrise, and part of 8.12, the report, the portion of that report dealing with Sunrise as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, am I too quiet? Do you want me to move this closer?
Oh, you were perfect there. Just when you first started speaking.
Okay.
I don't know if it was the internet here. It seems fine now. Okay. All right. Consent agenda, Ms. White Fox.
The consent agenda item listed for the November 17th, 2021 council meeting be received for information.
I'm going to move for that, please. Councillor Sapoulis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any questions or comments? Nope. Okay, all in favor, Councillor Sapoulis.
Favor.
Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Okay, Councillor Bulmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
All right. Ms. White Fox, are the delegations in the gallery?
Yes, I have Mr. Peter Cummins here, and I believe Ms. Ann Kane also is being moved over to present.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you, Ann. Nice to see you, Peter. Okay, Peter, I assume you're going to present?
I am, thank you, yes. Good morning. Thanks everybody for your time on the council meeting today. So I'm going to speak on behalf of the board and the steering committee for the capital campaign project that's been ongoing at Sunrise. And is also here, obviously, if there's some specific questions to sort of the history or the impact of Sunrise in its current operation as well that I'm less familiar with. So if you have questions, either one of us will be happy to handle them. We were here last year at this same meeting to apply for the grant, and we were happy to be awarded 50% of the available grant. We got $12,500 last year, which I think you will have seen from the materials submitted have been put to very good use in the last 12 months. And so we're back to update you, and you received the application for the grant. You also received the presentation that I submitted. That's more for context. I don't expect to speak to every slide. I think you are all quite familiar with Sunrise. And so what I want to do, I'll share the deck, but I probably will not speak to every item in the deck. All right, so you're able to see that now? So what I want to speak to, rather than the slides individually, is why this is a good investment of township funds and their grant. Sunrise is a bit of a jewel in the township. Its mission, as you're familiar with, is serving children and young adults with special needs, and they do so in a way that very few can, with the horse-based programming and the skills and volunteers that Sunrise has been able to attain and attract over the many years that it's been in operation. It's a charity. It's closing in on 40 years of successful operation. It operates without regular government funding for the operating side of the programs. It relies on fundraising, foundation support, individual donor support, does receive capital grants periodically, particularly from groups like Ontario Trillium Foundation for aspects of the facility that have been upgraded over time and put to good use there. Has a huge history of innovation in terms and expansion of the services and the impact that it has. And I'm sure you've probably all been there, but it is a beautiful property and it's very well maintained. And there are very few operations that can run for 40 years the way they have. So anyway, it's a jewel. The impact currently is, it impacts up to, when it's running outside of COVID, 120 riders a week. There are hundreds of volunteers listed and participating and committing to Sunrise. We do over 250 campers in a summer, half of which are those with special needs. It's an integrated camp, again, somewhat unique, certainly in this area. It's got highly qualified staff, Cantor certified instructors. Sunrise is the only residential Cantor certified training facility in the country. So we train certified therapeutic riding professionals. And they do equine facilitated wellness and mental health counseling, as well as the recreational programs. So the need that we are trying to address with the current projects is, number one, a huge demand for current services. So there's unmet needs there. We need private therapy space to increase the horse-based therapy that is more of a medical support. We need to expand the facilities to accommodate demand for recreational and therapy riding for the general population. We need to be able to dedicate some more space for life skills training for those that need to be able to manage as much as possible on their own in the community. And we also have support, for example, for school programs. We have 6 school programs that use the facilities at Sunrise, and there are currently 12 more schools sitting on a waiting list. So those are the existing services, and part of our program, as you've seen in the submitted information, is to expand those facilities and services. But the big part of this is about addressing unmet needs around residential and respite support for young adults with special needs in their families. And so if you look at the scope of what we're trying to do, we want to expand to provide a residence and respite. We're going to expand the arena and the barn expansion and creative arts building. And we can do all of that as we execute the program either simultaneously or concurrent in sequence. And you can see the scope of the actual facilities there. The impact is what's really important. If we look at expanding the respite and residential area, we've got social enterprise, assisted housing. We're in a unique rural setting. We can provide indoor space for year-round therapy and wellness activities. And so the impact here is 14 residences and the families of those individuals who are worried about where their children are going to live when the parents are no longer able to support them. And respite, 6 respite rooms, times 365 days is something like 2,000 people impacted in a year, plus their families. Takes it up to 5,000 or 6,000 people impacted. And so the funds that we're looking for are to help progress the ability to provide services to those people. It fits with Sunrise, this project, because we have the land, we have rezoning that we've done through the township. We almost have site plan approval. It's submitted and we're waiting for final comments and approval. And so we are ready to take the next stage, which is to move to being shovel ready. Up to this point, we have spent about $150,000. That's being funded by township grant, CMHC, seed grant, and individual donations specifically for capital purposes. Just out of interest, out of the 150,000, 31,000 of it went back to the township in terms of application fees for rezoning and site plan application. And to get ready for being shovel ready, we need about another 100,000 for architect and consultant fees, and we're anticipating probably about another 100 to 150,000 in development charges and as well as permit fees. And so that will take us to the stage ready to go out to tender, and that's what we want to focus on in the next 12 months as we raise funds. That's what we would be applying the township grant to. Now, there are plenty of slides in this deck to show where we stand with respect to the actual planning. We have the facility designed, we have the site plan designed, we have renderings and images. I'm not going to speak to all of them unless you have any questions, but it's clear that the progress from last year is significant. We are ready after site plan approval, subject to funding, to start the process of construction drawings and moving into construction. So I'm going to stop at that point because I think you have enough information to be able to know the scope of what we're trying to do and the potential impact of this project. But if you have questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Peter. If you can just stop sharing your screen for me, please.
Will do.
There we go. All right. Appreciate your presentation, and just open up to council. Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting project. I have several questions. First of all, how far along are you to realize the funding that you need for this project? You got $9 million for your main building, and you got some extra another $1 million on top of that for the other 2 phases.
Yeah, we have a significant amount of work to do in that respect. So we've had discussions with the county where we've been applying a couple of times for the last couple of rounds of affordable supportive housing funding that they administer for the sort of federal provincial funding for for affordable housing. We were not the recipients in those, but we anticipate new rounds of funding starting in 2022, and we'll be applying for that. And our project has had significant positive feedback from those participants. So St. Joseph's Hospital in Guelph received the funding for the last 3 years. We expect to be high on the list in terms of potential projects for that coming in the coming years. Those numbers, don't know what they will be, but they're typically in the order of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million for affordable housing. We've had conversations with CMHC, and they will fund up to 95% of a project for affordable housing, subject to meeting certain criteria. And so part of that is in loan, part of that is in grant. So that's the kind of public funding side that we pursued, but we have not received commitments. And we are in a quiet phase of our capital fundraising campaign, where we're trying to attract significant donors who will be the sort of cornerstone of the private side of the capital campaign. But at the moment, in the bank, we do not have a lot of money.
Okay, so any rough timeline for when you think you'll get shovels in the ground?
So this will probably not happen in 2022. The target would be the spring of 2023, subject to trying to get the funding in place to complete it. So if we look at the CMHC and the federal provincial funding for affordable housing, the timeframes for that would be starting within 120 days of getting successful application approved and the contract signed, which at the earliest would be December of next year. So then you're looking at the spring of 2023 as the earliest possible, but that's subject to filling in the rest of the funding at this point in time. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. And yeah, super exciting project. And you're talking about 2023. That's not that far off. So that's you got a lot happening. I just had a little question. In the grant application form, this is in regards to, you're calling it element 1. I'm just wondering if you can expand on the statement in respect to the spec ed wait list and how the expansion of the barn and the drive shed can help with fee generating.
So Anne, did you want to address that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I got the full question.
Sorry, I didn't hear quite. What did you say? Which wait list? Are you talking about
You
the
just
school
mentioned
wait list?
I think that's what it is. And I was just looking to see if that's what you were referring to. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, we do have a school wait list, and obviously school only goes from September to June. So we can only accommodate so many people. At the moment, we just have, well, we have a huge arena, but once it's used by one school, obviously you can't have another school coming in. So the expansion of the barn will allow extra activities like grooming horses and things like that to at least bring some other school children from special education classes in. We are also, part of our phasing is a small new arena. We have applied to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for funding for that. That application went in October. We won't hear till January next year if we are successful with that. And that's to increase physical activities for people in your community and for, school children, etc. And that would also, so that would give us it means that you could have 2 concurrent programs going, one in the large arena, one in the small arena, which accommodate individuals, maybe a child with autism that just cannot work in a communal space with a group, but could work independently, or there is going to be a huge need for mental health counseling with the outcome of from this pandemic, and some, and particularly for young people with special needs, because they're finding it very hard to just to understand why they can't go to the farm, why they can't be with their horses and things. So there's multi-uses of that barn expansion and the arena, and it's all fee-based. Does that answer your question, or?
Yep.
Okay.
that clarifies it. Sorry, I was just looking for my second question. You actually touched on the mental health component, so I'm going to skip down. And again, I guess this question is for you.
I'd have to turn your video off,
A
Councillor
little
Bailey.
bit further down in the, a little further down, I'm noting that you mentioned a variety of age groups and abilities that the expansion and the barn expansion. I'm just wondering what the age group that the grant would help support that you're asking for. Or is it more of a whole spectrum? So is it a variety of ages, or is this grant going towards a more specific age group?
No, I think there's a variety of ages because we do address that. Obviously, there's more, there's a great deal of interest from the schools, as we wouldn't have 12 schools on the wait list, which is school age children. But our general age range is starting at 3. We can take children in at 3 years of age because many of them have, especially with physical disabilities, have been in therapy almost since birth. So this is very motivational, and we find that there's a great need for that. But we go right up to adult, as Peter suggested, a lot of young adults. We've got school graduates, 21 years of age with special needs who are not employment ready. And so we have a program which gives them some really good life skill foundation. But as for participants, they go right up into an older age group as well. But I would say the majority are school age children into early youth, early adult, into their 20s and 30s.
Great. So touching on a whole spectrum of ages. And I would imagine the parents, it's not really mentioned in here, but respite is great for the individual, but more importantly, I would imagine for the parents.
Oh, Sarah, that's a very good observation, because it's the parents that need the respite. I mean, this is 24/7. You expect your children to go off to college and university and maybe, get their own apartments and everything in the normal stream of life. That doesn't happen with these young people, and there are absolutely no advantages out there for getting independent, supported living. There are many programs, and as you probably know, community living is moving away from community living, like group homes and things. This is not what we are building. This is not our intention. All our people who will be living in this residence will have their own front door. They'll have their own street names and numbers, but they will, as they need support, they will have support. They can make their own decisions, but with support, because many of these people need that. Our parents have said, one particular parent who's got a son of 30 who has autism, is on the autism spectrum, and he doesn't give eye contact and has very little speech. And she has said that Sunrise has not meant an incredible change in his life, but it's affected their whole family. And it's like when you hear the Bell ad about who does mental health affect, it affects everybody in the family. And that is true of so many of these people with disabilities. And our range is great too. It's physical and cognitive disabilities that Sunrise addresses.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anne.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And if you could just touch briefly on the requirement for the environmental assessment around the bats, the costing of that, and the time frame that needs to be done for me, please.
Peter, I don't know if you've got anything on that. We haven't heard anything recently.
No, so I think we did engage Abood Associates to give us a response to the township planning department's request for that information. That has been submitted. It was submitted about a month ago. I think it was to reduce the scope of that work, because it was going to be $8,000 to $10,000 to do some of that EIS work. But with the input from Grand River Conservation Authority and their stand on it, I think there's the potential to be able to modify that. So it's still to be determined, I think, Mayor, what the actual cost is going to be. As I said, however, it cost us $22,000 to put the site plan application in as it is. And so each time we have to go back for specialized technical reports, they tend to run in the $2,000 to $10,000 range, depending on how big they are.
Okay, thank you. We won't be dealing with the grants until later on in the meeting, but I encourage you to, sit in the attendees section of the Zoom, and if you can't, then it'll be accessible through YouTube later. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Whitefox, do you have a resolution to receive the delegation, please?
Yes, the council receives a delegation by Peter Cummins, Chair Steering Committee for Sunrise Therapeutic Riding and Learning Center regarding Category 3 grant application for information.
I get a mover for that, please? Councilor Spoulos, seconder, Councilor Bailey. All in favor, Councilor Spoulos,
In favor?
Councilor Bailey,
Favor.
and I'm in favor. That's carried. Thanks again for delegating. We appreciate your time. So we'll just wait for Ms. Whitefox to move them out, and we'll bring in our next delegation. Welcome back, Matthew and Jessica.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've moved over, looks like Miss Kathleen Zimmerman, but I believe it's Mr. Art Zimmerman that is going to be delegating.
Excellent. We'll wait till the video comes on so I know who. Art, are you there?
It looks muted.
Probably away from their computer.
No, we're not.
Oh, there we go.
Can you see Art too? Not yet.
I cannot.
Okay, let me just see if the video, start video here.
I hear Kathleen. There we go.
There you go.
Not like you need to see me.
We have to be on camera. You have to be on camera.
Okay, that's how it works.
Yep. Fair is fair. Anyways, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Sealy, and to all of council. I certainly appreciate your time and consideration for our grant application of $12,500. I have a very brief comment here, and then I certainly throw it back to questions. So we are obviously, like everyone else, still dealing with all the implications of COVID and the impact that it's had on all of us, and particularly our operations here around the lake. So I'd just like to give you a quick update on what has happened over this past year and what we've done to overcome some of our challenges and what we're looking at going forward. So we're still dealing with all of that. I was asked, first off, I was more or less asked or told that I had to stay on president through this year to help guide the board and the lake through all of the challenges that we face. I did that, quite honestly, very reluctantly. I was hoping to step out of this role altogether, but I'm back. Second point that we had to deal with is that all our fundraising events again for this year were canceled. We had we actually had two 50-50 draws around the lake, but all of the normal fundraising events were all canceled due to COVID, which is a major impact on our bottom line. We had difficulty in materials and staffing for the dredge. Repairs are an ongoing issue with us. Our equipment, as you all are aware, is getting very, very old and near the end of its lifespan. And every year we have costs involved in trying to keep the equipment together. And then this year we also had one of our dredge operators, the excavator, leave. We had to find replacements for that. So that really threatened our ability to do anything this year at all. One of the biggest issues that we faced, and we mentioned this last year when we were in front of all of you, was our pit area capacity, where we hold all the sediment that we are dredging out of the lake. It was full, so that also threatened our ability to do anything this year. And then obviously, like everyone else, the cost for materials, fuels, repairs, and insurance were all considerably up. So to operate on what was our budget becomes even more challenging as we go forward through all of these cost increases. So what we've been doing to overcome these challenges, I had agreed to stay on as president until May of 2022. At that point, I will be stepping down. I've announced it to the board, and most people around the lake now know that. So we will be in the process of finding a new president to guide the PLCA going forward at that time. We reached out to the community for support. Obviously, with our fundraising curtailed, we really need our local support here around the lake. And I'm very pleased to announce to council that we managed to, through private donations, raise $78,187 in donations. So the lake is definitely still very much behind this project and its continued support. We also reached out to the lake community in regards to our dredging plan, because given our limited resources and the age of all our equipment, we know that it's coming near the end of the lifespan. So we actually ended up altering the plan that we had for this year based on feedback that we had from our own community about where they felt the greatest need was to operate this year. So we changed our plans going into it. We managed to repair the equipment, and we also hired new staff and trained them. And the new staff are actually pretty amazing. I've been watching them in operation. They've been running since the beginning of October. We also agreed to cover some trucking costs, which is something we don't typically want to do as far as a pit is concerned. We'd prefer not to have to cover that, which is a major cost, but we're pretty well bound to do that in order to remove some sediment and create space for us. So a local farmer took 100 triaxle truckloads off our site. That also enabled us to create space for material for this year and also for next year. So it was something we were reluctant to do, but it certainly paid dividends. The repairs were all completed and the insurance was paid, which then enabled us to begin our dredging program in October. And thanks to the very good weather that we've had so far, unlike BC, but our good weather from October till now has enabled us to basically jam a whole year of dredging into these 2 months. In fact, you may hear the dredge drive by here. It went out this morning already. It's going out again right now. I hear it in the background. So we've managed to take out 100 barge loads of material for this year, which is a normal operating year for us at the best of times. So despite that short time frame window, we've managed to do that. So where are we right now? We have about $10,000 left in our bank account. So we're back down. We spent, let me see here, between dredging, pit work and trucking, we spent $213,000 on this project this year of funds that we've raised. We're into another major push for donations around the lake. We challenged the board at our last meeting, and I know Councillor Bailey was there at the meeting where we're making a major push to obviously replenish our funds to make sure we can operate again. And fundraising for 2022 is still very uncertain. The major things that we've been able to do, the dances, the home tour and things like that, don't look like they're going to come off given our current restraints. So everything will be through private donations and any support that we can get. And the board is reviewing the plans right now. I've challenged the board to come up with a strategy for what areas of the lake that they need to look after next year, while we still have the ability to A, raise funds, and B, keep the equipment on the lake. So your support in that is very much appreciated. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to update the board on. Pretty well everything that we have done here as this project got initiated was through a plan. So some of these notes, as well as all of these notes, and probably another stack very similar to that, is all of the analysis that was done on this lake. And the basis of everything that we've been doing has been based on a 2001 plan that was developed called the Puslinch Lake Adaptive Management Plan. And it recommended for this project that in order to restore this lake to a very healthy lake, it recommended that we had to remove 1 million tons of material out of this lake at that time an estimated cost of $10 million. So here we are now, coincidentally, 20 years later. We've removed approximately 270,000 tons of material from the lake, and our cost so far is $1.5 million. So to put that into perspective, we've taken out 25% of the sediment at 15% of the estimated cost, and that's because we operate on shoestrings and duct tape, and that's how we've been doing this all along. So any support that we can get from council at this point is certainly very, very much appreciated. And on that note, I would pass it over for questions.
Thank you, Art. Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I'm impressed with your constant ability to go out and raise the funds. It's a very daunting project, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Just a question with respect to ongoing work. You mentioned that you're finished only 25%. Is your intention to keep plugging at it till you're 100% or something like that, or somewhat less?
We would love to hit 100%. The reality is we've been at this for 20 plus years now, and we're at 25%. So I'm not going to survive the other 75%, and neither would our equipment. So honestly, at this point, I think our situation is very much driven by the age of our equipment. In addition to what we've talked about for investments, there's been about $500,000 largely raised through private donations around the lake to pay for the actual equipment itself. And right now it's at the end of its lifespan. So I don't think we're going to have the ability to go back out to the community and raise that kind of capital to continue this beyond the next few years. So we're hoping now just to keep operating as long as we can, safely and viably keep our equipment out on the lake.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, let me just stop my video. Yeah, I'm really impressed with the amount of kind of creative fundraising and community that you've created over there. It's coming to the meetings, you can just tell there's a lot of work going involved. Everyone's always trying to think of different ways to raise funds. I don't have any specific questions. I was actually going to ask you to do an update. Just knowing some of the sheets that were submitted don't tell the whole story. So I appreciate you, kind of going over the where you've come from and where you're at now. There's sure been a lot of work happening over there. So thanks for that, Art.
You're very welcome. I'm more than happy to give you the materials that I just covered off. I can send that off to Courtney to share. One of the things is we were very uncertain whether we were actually going to be able to pull off anything this year at all. So as the grant process started, the recommendation was we need to put an application in and then let's see what happens. We're fortunate to come back to council now to sit back and say we have been able to get our equipment out on the lake and do a very significant amount of work this year. So that was part of the reason why I wasn't doing a full presentation this year as in past years. And you pretty well covered off the history on the lake several times over anyway. So.
Okay. Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. I understand the board's desire to keep you on over the years. You've been an honest broker and a good partner on this project with the township, and I appreciate all the work that you've put into it and helping us understand the challenges that you and the residents group face with this project. So I sympathize with both you and the board on that. Interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the adaptive management plan, because that was that was almost the key to unlocking this early on in the process. And you mentioned that you've got about 25% of the work done that plan envisioned over 20 years. But if I recall correctly, it took a while before you got this method in place. So can you give me a sense of, once you got this method in place, how that really made it possible to see that the goal of the adaptive management plan was achievable compared to all those other crazy things that wasn't your choice necessarily, but that your group had to try to get to where we are, to a method that works. So in other words, how much per year are you getting out now compared to before you had the dredge?
I would say an actual sediment material that has come out of the lake, we're operating at anywhere between 7 and 10 times the amount of actual sediment being removed as a result of this process versus the hydraulic dredge. For those who may not be familiar again with the hydraulic dredge it's like a very large pontoon boat. It operates with a snowblower type machinery on the very front of it that's lowered down into the lake. It's got augers that circulate, and then there's a big pump on this pontoon boat that pumps material then back onto the shore. In order to do that, it had to go through an 8 to 10 inch hard plastic pipe that also had to be dragged out onto the lake. and it severely impacted where we could go on the lake. And also the biggest problem with that whole process is it drew 90% water and 10% sediment. And with the weed beds that we have here in the lake, it constantly got jammed up. So we were spending as much time cleaning out the augers and trying to find ways to get pipe in locations where we could actually use it. Whereas now with the dredge and with the channel that we've cut through the islands, it's enabled us to go to virtually any corner of this lake and take a whole lot more material out at a far more efficient rate. So this has made a tremendous difference. And that was done about 7 or 8 years ago now when we made that shift.
So essentially, you've probably got about 20% of your goal done in the last 7 years, as opposed to 25 over 20 years.
That would be a fair comment. And a few of those years, quite honestly, we didn't do anything because we were in the whole permitting process with the M&R, MOE, and various other levels, GRCA. We have another stack of material that actually Hardin Environmental was doing, and the township did step up and pay for some of those costs as well on the hydrological surveys underneath the lake. So there's been a lot of studies, so we weren't operating in every one of those 21 years.
Right. And I know it may look like I'm trying to develop a case for the board to keep you on, that you likely have another 20, 24, 25 years left in you, which would get the job done at the current rate. But I was just trying to get my head around, the biggest, how big a difference it made getting that dredge, and what is the actual timeline left if the group decided to carry on. And so it looks like even at this rate, if you got new equipment, you'd be looking at another 20 to 25 years to finish it according to the original plan.
That would be a fair comment, but I don't think we're coming up with $500,000 for it. So more
understood.
realistically, we're looking at probably 2-3 years, very, very conservatively, 5 years at the outset, but short of that, this equipment will be finished. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Councillor Goyda?
Thanks. Thanks again for presenting today. And I just also wanted to say a big thank you to you and to the whole PLCA for the many years that you spent working on this project. I know that I've mentioned this before, but when you see some of those aerial photos of how the lake once looked compared to how it looks now, it really is quite unbelievable. And I think that the PLCA should be extremely proud to see the changes that have taken place, but also very proud to have fought through all the challenges that have come, especially over the past couple of years, without being able to fundraise the normal way because of COVID. You did speak last year to a couple of points that really resonated with me. One was the improvement of the habitat for fish and wildlife that have been accomplished through the dredging program. And the second was the legacy component of your work, providing a healthy lake to leave for future generations. So the aesthetics aside, those are two components of your work that I feel really benefit the community as a whole and really speak to how valuable the work that you've done has been to the community. I did just want to ask you though, and you've touched on it in your presentation about being at approximately 25% of the end goal. But I just wanted to touch on, and I know I sort of asked the same question last year as well, but the dredging project is a project that for several years in a row, I've always thought is the last year. This is the last year our project will be complete after this year. But what I'm hearing today is that the intent is now to just carry it on as long as physically possible to do so. So I just wonder if you can touch on that. Is that just a shift in the goals and objectives of the PLCA, or has something changed? Or I'm just trying to connect how, in my mind, this is almost done, and now to learn that we're only a quarter of the way there.
Mm-hmm. That's a very fair comment, and thank you very much for asking it, because it's a question we also have amongst ourselves. How long can we operate, and how long can we keep this operation going? So the PLCA is never intended to leave this lake. The PLCA itself will continue on, and that's the challenge for the next president and the board members to come up with, and saying post the dredging program, what is going to be the major initiative by the PLCA? Our goals are always the same: to restore this lake to the best of our ability, both for the environment and for recreation, and for the habitat of the birds and the fish. And coincidentally, we see more birds. Just as this meeting was going on, 3 white swans went sailing past my dock here, because I'm looking out over the lake from my kitchen. And the swans weren't on this lake more than 3 years ago. It wasn't habitable for them. We've had osprey out here. We have had bald eagles out here. We've had all sorts of different variety of birds now that come here at a regular basis. The fish habitat's all coming back. That's always been the goal of the PLCA, is to restore this habitat and to restore recreational use, however that looks. Our dredging program, however, is something entirely different. And it's basically by far the most expensive and challenging operation that we have. And it's driven very much by our ability to reach out to our community and various groups to try to get support to keep this afloat. If that dries up in any way, shape, or form, this whole project comes to an end. And the other part of the end program is the actual age of the equipment itself. When you're operating on a lake like this with dredging material, typically you only have anywhere from 5 to 7 years operating on the material, because it's very, very hard on both the barge, the excavator, and all the various equipment that you're using. So that is the biggest drawback for us. We would love to be able to go and complete the next 75%, but the reality is I don't think that that's going to happen. That's my personal opinion, but that's also the opinion and support by most of the board. But we're going to try to keep this going as long as we possibly can. So as long as we can safely put that barge out in the water, and we can, provide enough funding for the company to come and do this work, we're going to continue to do it as long as we can. Because it's important to the lake, and it's important to those future generations. You come out to the lake now and you can see clear water everywhere, and there's not a day goes by that I'm out here talking to lake residents and they don't say the same thing. You look back 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't navigate this lake even by boat, let alone trying to look out and see just open water everywhere. So it's had a major, major impact over the last 10 years in particular with what we've been able to accomplish. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. And again, thank you once again for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. Art, we're likely going to miss you come May. I really appreciate the value you bring when you present. You have an even keel. There was some pretty hot topics and contentious issues through the COVID, and you didn't let that resonate in your presentations. You brought solutions and ideas, and I think you did a great job. So I understand there's always a time to hand the baton over, and for you, you've decided that's in May. But I'm sure we'll still be able to see you once in a while in the community, maybe even on the lake. So with that, we'll deal with the grants, as I mentioned, to Sunrise Equestrian later in the meeting. However, I will remind you though, last year we did pass a resolution that the grants shall be all inclusive of the 0.5% as the policy dictates. So I believe there's some room there for supporting the great work you guys are doing down there, guys, gals, people, you know what I mean. And so if you have the time, I encourage you to wait it out, but if not, you can view it on YouTube later or contact one of the council members. So thank you again for your presentation.
Anything you can do to help is very much appreciated, and I appreciate all your time.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank your IT support for getting the video working.
Everyone knows who that is. Yes, thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Resolution.
The council receives a delegation by Art Zimmerman representing Puss Lynch Lake Conservation Association regarding the Category 3 grant application for information.
Are you a mover for that, please? Councillor Bulmer, seconded by Councillor Spoulis. All in favor? Councillor Spoulis.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer.
In favor.
And Councillor Goida.
In favor.
That's carried. Thanks again, Art.
Thank you.
Okay. Now the work. So until they all out. Yeah. So council, we're going to try and do this very linear. I had a discussion with staff prior to the meeting. We're going to go through the recommendations and the resolution and have our discussions instead of bouncing back and forth all over the agenda. And and then we'll just work our way down through the agenda as it is presented. Hopefully that simplifies things. If it ends up, if anybody's lost or confused, just interject and we'll back up. So Ms. Hassan is going to be available. So what we're going to do is we're on page 33 of the agenda as presented. And under the recommendations component, if anybody hasn't noticed, we realized that the meeting date is incorrect. That was the original meeting date proposed in October. And we postponed it until today. So Ms. Hassan is aware of that and she's going to update that. So the first one that staff is looking for direction on, should council wish to phase in further costs associated with the Cambridge Fire Service contract, that X amount be incorporated in 2022 budget and funded by the taxation levy. So we'll start there. I'll start with Councillor Saboulis and see what your thoughts are on that component of the recommendation.
My thoughts are on that item to leave it as is and not pursue that. We have other issues in the budget that we have to address as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey. Where'd she go? Did she drop? Oh, there she is. Just turn your video off, Councillor Bailey, please. So we can hear you.
Lost connection. I didn't quite hear everything Councillor Sakula said, but I think it was similar to my thoughts is to wait for some of the follow-up reports that have come out of the previous meeting we had regarding the fire services. So my suggestion was to keep it as is.
Okay, Councillor Bulmer.
As is, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Goyda.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. Okay. The second component of that recommendation, that council authorize pre-budget approval of the amount listed in the budget for the proposed new equipment operator position in order to commence recruitment. I will maybe ask staff to just give a quick summary as to why that's in here. I believe it was through our org review. Is that okay, Mr. Schwindinger?
Sure, yes, I can speak to that. As council may recall, a little over probably 2 years ago now, org review was commenced, and one of the outcomes was some additional resources to be added to the Public Works Department. There were 2 equipment operators that were recommended. So at that time, council's decision was to add 1, which was done last year. And then they wanted to see how that impacted it in terms of being able to meet the service demands and the operations that were required. With the changing in shifts and things, particularly for winter operations, the recommendation has come forward now that was extremely helpful, but we still do require the additional position that was recommended. So that this is just the implementation of what was recommended in the previous org review.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Spools.
Yeah, with this climate change and all this unknown weather conditions, I don't have a problem supporting this extra staff person. And it's, as our CEO mentioned, it helps us maintain our current level of standards to the community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. That was my question as well, as regards to the standard that we're maintaining. Excuse me. I guess my one question was just around the number of equipment, the amount of equipment we have now versus the amount of staff, and maybe does Mr. Fowler feel that it's a good match right now?
To answer your question, Councillor Bailey, yes, currently we do have a shortage of equipment operators per pieces of equipment available through Public Works. So again, the addition of this additional employee would not only benefit the winter control operations, but also benefit with operation during spring, summer, fall within the Parks Department, and then an overflow into the Public Works Department.
Great, thank you.
Counselor Ballmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Schwindinger, for bringing in the issue that this relates to service levels. And so, because I want to talk a bit about, we have a draft service level policy on our table for review later on in the meeting. And part of it speaks to road classifications, snow accumulation, and response times. And the table suggests that any roads that are class 3, 4, or 5, which I think all of our roads are either class 3 or 4 or 5, that we can have 8 centimeters of snow on the road. And then once we hit that, we have 12 hours to respond to clean it up. But I don't recall ever seeing more than 2 centimeters of snow on the road. We usually are running, sort of seem to have a bare road policy. So I'm just trying to compare the two. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the standard that's proposed. I mean, it says that anytime we have less than that amount of snow on the road, we've met the standard. So I just need to understand how I can compare the need to add an operator when it appears we're already meeting what we're about to adopt as our road standard for snow removal. And you know what I mean?
Is that for Mr. Fowler?
I don't know which would be best to answer it.
So I'll defer to Mr. Fowler on that. He organizes that work.
Thanks.
To answer your question, Councilor Ballmer, yes, the minimum maintenance standards are very, we'll say, cooperative when it comes to municipalities. So the response times do give municipalities ample time to respond. It is common practice, especially within Puslinch, that our common practice was to have employees and equipment ready to go. And over the years, Public Works has provided a service that the residents are very accustomed to now, where our response times are almost immediate without the need for 24-hour shifts. So and to answer your question, the additional operator would just enhance a very good service Public Works is currently offering.
So to restate, it would be to maintain the standard to which the residents have become used to, as opposed to going to the minimum standard. Those standards that we're seeing are the minimums where we could, in fact, according to minimum standards, have snow-covered roads for half a day. But that's not what our residents are used to or need to commute to their jobs elsewhere. So what you're proposing is to maintain the expectation as opposed to maintaining the minimum standard. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically there would be a definite, well, the appearance would be a definite drop in service level if we were to leave our roads snow covered for that extended period of time. It would enhance the winter operations, but this additional operator will be heavily utilized more for the spring, summer, fall construction activities and parks maintenance activities.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful then, because those service levels were also discussed in that report. And I know I'm mixing up 2 reports, but Mr. Chair, since they are related, may I ask another question then about service levels, since this person is going to be utilized for summer maintenance?
Sure.
Thank you. You mentioned that it'll make a big difference in the summertime. Are you just groundskeeping or facilities, or in what regard do you see that being more utilized?
With every new employee, Public Works and Parks brings on, we're adapting more of a hybrid model where basically wherever the need is throughout several of my departments, this individual will be trained and be relied upon to help out basically whenever it's needed. So the old saying, this individual will wear numerous set of hats throughout the day.
Okay, so duties as assigned. So we're not just getting an equipment operator, we're getting perhaps maintenance, facility maintenance, maybe some grass cutting, where they're needed, they'll be deployed. That makes me feel better about the proposal. I guess, ask some specifics about the wording of the service levels, but I'll leave those till we get to that document. That's been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Goida?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in support of this, but I did just have one quick question that has just been sort of brought to my mind based on what Councillor Balmer has just asked. One of the items that we had talked about in developing before the budget process had started was, and we'll probably get to this a bit later, it was increasing snow plowing frequency and increased tree maintenance. And I'm just wondering if the addition of this operator can help address, I mean, I obviously see how it can address the snow plowing component, but can it also perhaps assist in the tree maintenance as well? Mr. Fowler?
Yes, the possibility is there. In regards to increased snow plowing, with the new minimum maintenance standards for sidewalks, the township is now regulated to ensure that all sidewalks are clear after a snowfall, similar to the requirements for roads. So this one individual will be identified. His or her job will be to plow sidewalks before the commencement of school. And also they will be allocated to a plow truck, which will do our facilities and parking lots also. So for Public Works to demonstrate more of a snow plowing occurrence, currently that would require in the future possibly more staff, but at this time, we're only able to offer a day and a midnight shift with 3 trucks on in total. So that there is an increase in service level when it comes to sidewalks, which in the past we haven't been regulated to do. Currently moving forward, we are regulated, and it's about a 2 to 3 hour window that this individual will be in a sidewalk machine, making sure the sidewalks are cleared and at least treated. And the rest of their time will be in smaller parking lots and cul-de-sacs.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm supportive of the recommendation. I know that we're going to be putting in a new soccer field that will require more mowing. We're going to be discussing the service levels. I see that PCC being our flagship park, and with the farmers market going on and rentals, I'd like to see the weed eating, being back to normal, which is at least once a week. So, and then as alluded to here, we have that sidewalks that we need to maintain, and we have the students walking from the school to the PCC grounds. So we need to ensure that that's ready to go for them in the morning. So I'm supportive of that at this time. All right. Next item we're going to discuss. The council authorized a cost of living adjustment of 4% to be implemented effective January 1st, 2022, as outlined in the report FIN 2021-036. We'll discuss that. Councillor Spoulos?
Yes, my objective through the budget process is to ensure that we stay around 2% overall for a single family typical dwelling. This is blended rate. And also looking around what's happening around us, everybody seems to be settling somewhere around 2%. So my preference would be to have a cost living adjustment of 2%.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, looking at the report, I kind of took more of a sort of a holistic average approach. And it's noted that historically our average in Puslinch is about 1.7, not including last year. Historically, we've been close to the COLA average. We've never gone above 2.33%. So I think just taking all of that into consideration, I was suggesting about a 2% as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Balmer?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I look a little at this in a similar way, but maybe from a different angle. It was only last month or September, October when we approved the policy or reapproved the policy that used the COLA as, I guess some would say, as a starting point, but some might look at it as that would be the point. And as I see how this can change, and similar to Councillor Bailey, looking at what the averages have been, the first thing I thought was perhaps we need to revisit the wording of that policy. If it seems to work for council when it's 0, but doesn't seem to work for council when it's 4, then perhaps we need to look at the policy and maybe it should be reworded to be something more along the lines of a rolling average. Because if you look at what the county has been, or as Councillor Bailey noticed, what we have been, if we were to, if we had a policy that said it was a 5-year rolling average of COLA from August to August, we'd probably be looking at about 1.8% this year. If we put, considering the COLA is August to August is, or CPI August to August is 4%, that would give us, on a rolling average basis, that would make it about a 1.8% increase this year. So I can support a 2%, but I think we also need to look at being fair with staff and have a policy that we're willing to sort of make a commitment, make a direction, and follow it, so that they know what they're going to get, and we can get a policy that can take out the peaks and valleys and make it a little bit more predictable. And it still reacts, but it reacts, a little slower. So that's my perspective on this. And I don't know if that'd be a separate discussion, revisiting or updating that policy to that recommendation or that suggestion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Balmer. Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess when I looked at this, I know that staff has been accommodating and understanding with a 0% cost of living adjustment last year. And I also know that inflation is rising. But at the same time, I struggle with the cost of living adjustment that is more than double what it was pre-COVID. When I know that there's still many residents and business owners in the township who are still struggling and have also possibly had an increase in, a decrease in their income due to COVID. So that being said, I hear where Councillor Balmer's coming from, though. We can't have it one way one year and then not have it the same way the next year. And I don't think that's necessarily the most fair approach for staff either. So I would agree that perhaps the policy wording needs to be revisited. I was going to suggest perhaps the most fair compromise is to go with the average of the 3.03, but if we go with the rolling average, it's a different number as well. So I would be most comfortable at 2%, but in the discussion of fairness, I would also look at the 3.03 average.
Okay. So Councillor Balmer or some other member of council, I feel we need either a resolution to revisit the policy, and we'll discuss that, please.
Well, I'd put that motion on the table that we revisit the calculation of the COLA to be based on a rolling 5-year average of the CPI from August to August, the previous 5 years.
I get a seconder for that so we can discuss it. Councillor Spoulos. Okay, Councillor Spoulos.
I'd like to get an understanding and appreciation from staff's perspective rather than us making the decision. So I'm willing to hold that off until once we get through the budget process and in time for next year's budget. So right now, I'd like to have the benefit of staff's input to this before I make the leap.
I happen to agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, my intent wasn't to create the policy with this motion, just to have staff report back on it, or but they needed some direction on what to report back on.
I'll amend Councillor's comment, motion that staff be requested to report back on the on the proposal.
Or I would even amend it further to just report back on a proposal that provides a rolling average, and they can pick a different, I doesn't have to be 5, maybe they think 3 or 5 or so. You know, if that's easier too.
Okay. You good with that, Councillor Spillis?
Yeah, we can go a little bit further and say that staff report back on a more equitable assessment of annual rate increases, coal increases.
Okay. Ms. White Fox, do you have that captured? Is she there?
So, sorry, I have staff be requested to report back on a more equitable average of COLA rate increases. That's kind of what I caught. Originally, I had a rolling average, but I took that out. Does that sort of capture what we're looking for?
Councillor Bulmer?
I think it's more just an equitable way of calculating the annual cost of living adjustment. And maybe we could say, you know, including
Such as rolling average,
averages, yeah.
such as.
And maybe there's other methods out there that just to.
Exactly, yeah. I just don't want to be pinning staff down to a particular method when it's other ways are available too.
Exactly.
Sorry, just a question of clarification just from me as I report back on this. So in the past, we've provided the data from the comparator municipalities surveyed. Does council want that to continue to occur, or?
Councillor Bulmer?
Well, thank you. Yes, but that's another discussion as well. The comparators are good, but I'm often concerned about the comparators that were who's the comparator. I know it's very hard to do apples to apples, so I like to see the comparators, but at the same time, I'm looking for a policy that then we can see how our cost of living adjustment then fits in with our comparators, not to use our comparators to develop ours, but to see how ours is tracking against them, so that if I refer back to even just the exercise in the past of attracting staff, sometimes it isn't necessarily the population or the assessment base or the geographic area that determines the cost of staff. It's the closeness of other municipalities. So because we're close to the region of Waterloo, or close to the county, or close, those sometimes drive costs up. And also we understood from human resources experts that sometimes the distance, there's a ring sort of that goes out from Toronto, where there's bands of salaries that change like a target from Toronto. So there's, as much as the comparators are useful, I'm not sure I want to use them to develop our cost of living adjustment for our staff, because there are so many other parameters that go into attracting and maintaining quality staff here at the township. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Spillis?
Yeah, so my understanding is we'll keep what staff are reporting to us, and we'll have an emotion is to ask staff to look at a more equitable way of calculating COLA clauses, such as rolling averages.
We'll address what is proposed for the COLA after. I just want to get the direction for staff on this reporting back squared away first. We could put a placeholder in. We'll decide that next. So Ms. White Fox, what do you have recorded for the direction for the resolution?
So just to clarify as well, I had Councillor Balmer move and Councillor Spillis second. I believe that's still accurate, but I'll read what I have. That staff be requested to report back on a more equitable method of calculating the cost of living adjustment, such as rolling averages.
Are you comfortable with that? Councillor Moore, yes. Councillor Spillis?
Yes.
Okay, now comments. Councillor Bailey?
I'm just curious for the timing of this. Is this after we've decided the amount for this budget, or is this going to report back to help us make a decision for this year.
My vision is that we're going to put a placeholder in for the raise, which we'll discuss next, but staff, can you report back before the end of the budget process on that component?
Yes.
What's wrong, Matthew?
I thought it was a good firm yes. I appreciate that from our chief financial officer. That was good work.
Councillor Bailey?
I was just going to comment that I do appreciate the comparative.
Your internet is not doing well right now.
Oh, I know. Need to go. Oh,
I think you're there.
I'm good. Thank you.
Councillor Balmer?
What? Sorry.
Just further comments on the
Oh.
resolution, if you have any?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Councillor Guida?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay. Staff, this is not a knock at any of you. It's a challenging time. COVID has driven inflation up, which is then, it's indicative of this report. That's why it's so high. Council is supportive of each and every one of you. Your CAO, your bosses went to a rotating schedule. So it's not that we're not supportive of you, but we are cognizant of, the percentage would be, if it would be palatable to the public. So I look forward to the report back, and I just hope you don't feel it's an indication of council not being supportive of you. So that's, I guess I'll call a vote. So all in favor of that, Councillor Skoulos?
In favor?
Councillor Bailey?
In favor of that.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Guida?
Favor.
Okay, so next I want to see what council wants to leave in. The recommendation is 4% right now. Do we want to keep that as a stakeholder so that we can see where the budget is, and then we'll wait for that report to come back? Councillor Skoulos?
I'd rather see a 2% and we move from there.
Okay, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I would agree with 2% for
Okay.
now.
Councillor Balmer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had actually written down the same number that Councillor Goida had written down, the 3 point something. I had put down 3%, but I don't mind having a placeholder of 2% for now. So yeah, I'd support 2% as a placeholder for now. See where it gets us, and till we get the next policy back.
Okay, Councillor Goida?
I would agree.
Okay. All right, next. Council approves the 2022 one-time base budget increases amounting to $6,019 as outlined below. The first one is the Microsoft Office 365 email licenses for the amount indicated in the report. Any discussion around that one? Councillor Skoulos?
I would suggest that these one-time budget increases be taken from our under expenditures from 2021. Similar to what we did last year, there were some one-offs and we did the same thing, so it doesn't be included in the 2022 budget. It's part of the under expenditures for 2021.
Ms. Hassan, can you talk about that? Is that a possibility? And the implications?
Councillor Sapoulis, I guess your recommendation is that we utilize 2021 surplus funds?
Correct.
So I think that that would be okay, as these are one-time items. So we could do that if that's what council's direction is.
That's for a total of $6,000, $6,019.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Could you read that list, please, Mr. Chair, just to make sure I have the same in mind?
Yeah, that's the problem, because one of them is going to have a lot of discussion around it. So we kind of have to keep that in our mind. So the list is the Microsoft Office 365 email licenses, the fire safety boot allowance every 2 years. So that's the one-time budget increase of $3,500. Then we have, no, that's
it.
This is saying I should let you do this.
Sorry, just the only two one-time items are the Microsoft Office 365 email licenses because there are one-time implementation costs associated with those, which amount to $2,519. And then the fire safety boots allowance, as reported in this report, it's recommended that they be replaced every 2 years. And so there's a one-time cost of $3,500 for 2022 as it relates to that item.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna discuss the permanent ones as well, because the boots tie over.
Fine.
Because if the boots get in, then that'll tie into the one time. So the permanent increase of Microsoft Office email license of $1,275 in 2022, base budget increase. Any concerns with that one? Councilor Spillis?
No.
Okay, any concerns for that one? That one's okay. Let's do the fire safety boots allowance. Maybe as Mr. Bigrig is here, and we'll have some discussion around those. Councilor Spillis.
Yes, to me, it's it's a health and safety issue, and I don't argue with health and safety issues if that's the case. The only concern I've got is 2 years a realistic usage of those boots, and I would suggest that we put that off to every 3 years, because you're not looking at people with these fire boots by large are working 40 hours or 35 hours a week. They're coming in probably less than half that amount of time, and to expect that's good for 4 years. Well, should be able to do that for 3 years.
Mr. Bigrig, did you want to comment to that before I move on?
I don't have a lot to say. I've left the video off just to keep the internet line secure. I appreciate Councillor Sapula's comment about firefighter safety. And internally, we've had discussions about, is the number 2 years, is the number 3 years, is the number 4 years? I think that we can police that. That's probably the wrong word, but we can administer that ourselves internally with some internal controls about when the boots are replaced. It's not my intent to replace boots that don't need to be replaced. I'm just cautious to ensure that I have a process in place to ensure that I can replace boots when necessary. And you know, we have a 43-member department. Over a given year, we have 10 or 12 people that have exceptionally high turnout, and the rest not so much. So the gauge of whether it's 2 or 3 years, I would like to administer that internally with council understanding that I have no intention of replacing boots just for the sake of replacing them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, my question was as well around the 2 or 3 years, which led me to just wonder if there is sort of a uniform maintenance system, if boots are sort of regularly checked and get the okay, yeah, you're good for another year. I don't know sort of what system's already in place. But saying that if this amount is approved, but then not used, and just wondering what then happens to the money.
Councillor Bailey, then it just goes into the annual general surplus.
Which then funds the asset management plan.
Yeah, so not back into specific fire surplus, but into.
No, we don't do surpluses departmentally. We look at it corporately.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Bigrig. Yeah, two areas of questions or concerns or whatever. I support the direction we're going in here, and I guess my concern was just around the wording of some of these things. I see it just as you do, Chief. In fact, I see this as what we want to do is establish a safety closing reserve that is kept topped up, that the chief manages as needed. I don't think I certainly didn't have an expectation that these would be replaced, whether they were needed to be replaced or not. But that my concern was the wording suggested that, and I think if council's open to changing it to be understood as reserve, safety clothing reserve that is topped up as needed and is managed by the chief. I'm good with that because, as you say, some might wear out early, some might wear out late, and saying what number of years that is isn't really appropriate. We can't decide that here. But the other piece, the health and safety piece, I appreciated on the explanation sheet, the discussion of keeping the fire boots out of the administration area and the concern about tracking carcinogenic materials around, which made me understand, of course, if these are going to be worn, these safety shoes are going to be worn in the hall, I guess I'd have an expectation based on what you said about the other boots and things on the equipment that we'd see these boots, these safety shoes kept in a locker at the hall. We wouldn't then be taking these shoes back to the firefighters' homes and setting them next to the family shoes. These safety shoes would be something that would be kept in the hall for hall duties and home visits, you know, the home safe home and that kind of thing. Is that correct?
That's my intention. I view it as a municipal asset and it stays at the municipal facility, just like the bunker gear does.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, this all fits perfectly in with how I envision the use of these. So as long as we can get the language done properly to make sure that we all understand the same thing, I don't have an issue with it.
Councillor Goyda?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. I also, I see this from the health and safety perspective as well. But in addition to that, I also see it from the perspective of perhaps an added incentive to attract volunteers. We just heard last week about the challenges in that regard in terms of recruiting volunteers. And so perhaps this is an added incentive as well. And just to touch on Councillor Ballmer's point in regards to the expectation of individual firefighters, I'm just trying to understand how it works. So does the township purchase the boots for the firefighters, or do they go out and purchase the boots they're on their own and get reimbursed the cost of those boots based on some type of assessment that takes place to confirm that yes, they do need new boots? Like what is the process?
Who wants to answer? Sorry.
Yeah, I think Ms. Hassan will have to answer part of the question. My view is that I would communicate with finance that X number of pairs of boots have to be replaced, and the firefighters get permission to purchase them and expense them back up to the maximum reimbursement rate of $175. And then we would administer the regular replacement of the boots as necessary.
Okay, so they wouldn't just purchase them and then submit a receipt and ask if that's okay afterwards. There'd be sort of like an approval process beforehand.
Well, absolutely. And if somebody wants to buy a $400 pair of boots, I'm not adverse to that, as long as everybody understands that the boot allowance right now is $175 and the boots have to meet the minimum standard.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Big Rig, for this recommendation. I'm on board with the health and safety component of it. It wasn't clear to me that these shoes would be staying at the hall. I think that's important. If there's a carcinogen concern, then we don't want our firefighters tracking them home, and that will prolong their lifespan, and then it'll be administered through you or whoever your designate. So I'm supportive of it in that component. What else was I going to discuss about that? Oh, so I think that is it. So then that will bring us back to our one-time budget increase for the boots on page 33. So we're talking about the $6,000, $6,019 as outlined below. So the $3,500 was for the boots we just discussed, and then $2,519 for the email licenses. Now, we've had that discussion. Any concerns with that one-time increase being funded through the surplus from 2021? That was Councillor Spools' recommendation. Councillor Bailey?
I just,
Oh, gosh, your internet's not good.
question just came up.
Are you
Was
there?
had-
No.
Is there is there any cost savings in buying in bulk?
For
Is there any
what?
cost savings for buying in bulk?
For boots or what do you?
Buying boots in bulk?
I'll let Ms. Hassan try to answer that. Everybody has a different, it's tough because you don't buy 15 pairs of size 9. There could be different models, but Ms. Hassan?
Sorry, I don't really know the answer to that, but I'm assuming it would perhaps be lower because it's a quantity purchase, but maybe Mr. Schwendinger can just add.
Typically a purchase such as this isn't done as a bulk because you never really know exactly how many you're going to purchase each year, what the size is going to be, or some people for their footwear might have special needs or something like that. So this is pretty simple thing. You go get a set of safety footwear as long as they have the green patch and meet the designated safety requirements. You're reimbursed up to the set amount, which is currently 175. That's the simplest way to do it. If we'd have to start issuing tenders for boots or things like that, that would just become a whole nother episode in itself. So it's far easier to just let the people go get their own, and then maybe you're reimbursed up to the amount that you approve.
Does that help, Councillor Bailey? I'm going to move on. Councillor Bulmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I support this. I'd like to change the
The
language.
reason I'm asking is even for my husband's.
Oh. Councillor Bailey, your internet is giving you some difficulty. I don't know. Is there anything you can do to remedy that? Or is it my internet? You guys are hearing me fine, correct?
Yes.
All right, Councillor Bulmer, go. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, support it. Just like to change the language regarding the boots in the motion. Take out the every 2 years. Because that's obviously causing a concern, and that's not the intention anyway.
Okay. Councillor Goida.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Sorry, Chief, I remembered my question line now. So when we were discussing this clothing safety allowance budget line, and it's $18,000, and then I believe you provided a breakdown in an email, because the policy states $90 per firefighter. And if you divide the budget line by $90, it equals 193 firefighters. But that budget has sub lines to it where some of them are for the firefighting boots and items that, in my opinion, are equipment, right? So, sure, it's a piece of clothing that you put on, but without that equipment, you're not going to go do your job. So to me, I think that and you can just take this back and do it as you wish with these comments, but I think those items should be separated out. They're not part of our clothing allowance of $90, because to me, the perspective is, and possibly to the public, there's $18,000 or $20,000 for clothing and then, we're coming asking for more. And and my first thought is, well, can it not be managed within the 18,000? Well, that 18,000 isn't for clothing. A large percentage of that is for equipment, which is your fire boots, the cleaning, the inspection. So I would like to see that stuff taken out and just be similar to other equipment that we have at the fire hall. And then the number will be more reflective of the true $90 per firefighter. Then it's a lot more palatable, or it's easier to make the decision with these requests. So I'll just leave that with you. And if you do have a comment, you're more than welcome to say back to me. But if you don't, I'm fine with that as well.
I'm in full agreement with you. I'm a little bit challenged with this particular budget process. The detail that some of the lines are at make it challenging to do satisfactory presentations. I think we can get this narrowed down when the new fire chief takes over. I have a list of commentary for the new chief.
What? You're not sticking around?
Well, I'll be around, but not in this role.
I'm just teasing. Okay, so that, back to staff, I believe the one-time base budget increases are approved and then funded through the surplus. One thing I do want to say is I put a question to the CAO and likely went through the director of finance about the surpluses. I didn't realize that our surplus from last year, pretty much 1% of it was only from, not from budget lines not being spent. The rest of it was new growth. To me, I thought there was a larger component of our surplus from, whether it be less expenditures or, favorable contracts. It's not the case. We are on a very, very tight budget when it comes to the surpluses. So I'm glad this is only $6,000 because if, we started trending, I'm not being critical, Councillor Spoulos, but if we start a trend, we don't have a lot of wiggle room in there, and we're dependent on the, the new assessment growth in the township for those surpluses. That was a good eye opener. So on to the second component, which is the permanent budget increases. And that is, again, the email licenses of $1,275, the fire safety boot allowance. We're going to strike out every 2 years. We're going to let that be administered by the chief or his designate. And then we should have a discussion around the parks and facility advertising of $4,800. That's page 34 of the agenda. So Councillor Spoulos, parks and facility advertising.
I'd just like the staff just to go over what we're going to get out of this $4,800 a year.
Are you Mr. CAO or Courtney?
Sure, I can start. So we looked at what was, I believe, allocated to the PCC on an annual basis for advertising, and I believe it was $1,500. And we were looking to make that the same for our parks and for our other facilities as well, just so that they could also benefit from advertising. We are looking at our new communications policy and the opportunities that will present for social media for us, as well as working with the rec committee and all their great suggestions on the different types of external advertising that we can do through paper-based different newsletters that are posted and things that we're hoping can attract new users for our facilities for weddings and for different types of events like that. So we're just trying to make it equitable across the facilities by allocating an amount to each type of advertising and then utilizing some of our new tools that our communications policy will give us once it's approved.
No, I'm in favor. You have to spend money sometimes to make money, so I'm good with this.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Sorry about that, folks. Sorry, a little frazzled here now. Sorry, the intention is to be increasing the rental of our facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Was there concern pre-COVID of the number of rentals needing to be increased?
I think we've heard on a regular basis from our rec committee about opportunities that we could be taking advantage of for advertising. And like I said, we've heard that feedback for a number of years. And I think just with formalizing a policy that allows us to do that, I think we're in a great position to start that this year. So I think that there's definitely room for improvement in how we can advertise and the groups that we can get into our facilities.
Okay, great. I'm just asking this last question, sort of coming from the Badenoch community perspective. We've often booked people from out of town, which is great, but then our local families, might not have space to use their local facility. So is there talk around how that might be handled if all of a sudden we have an influx of out of town rentals?
I don't think that's been a discussion at this point. I know that we do have a rate that different community groups can take advantage of, reduced rates and things like that if they are local groups that offer benefit to the community. So that does give our local groups a little bit of an advantage with that respect. But in terms of availability, I don't think we have ever been to the point where we've struggled with scheduling in that way. So that really hasn't been a concern that's come up at this point.
Okay, great. That gives me some perspective. I would just hate to spend a lot of money on advertising to then create a problem with not having enough space for our Puslinch residents. So thanks for that.
Okay, Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, maybe I see this a little differently. We just had a communications report, which we heard about there, and it was very much suggesting that the township should focus on using their own platforms. And we will be having, new social media platforms coming on stream, and which that report suggested would be, the most cost-effective way to maximize the utilization or the use of our facilities. So this seems to be out of line with that. And I also have the concern that if we're going to start paying to put advertising in one place, we can't be seen to be picking favorites. So we'd probably have to put it in every place. And my preference would be that before we spend this kind of money, why don't we look and see how the new social media streams are going to bring online with their very inexpensive promotion opportunities could be used to promote all the things that have been talked about within the existing amount. If we've been spending $1,500 on advertising for the PCC in the past, based on what the staff indicated in that communications report, that should probably buy an awful lot of advertising on Facebook if we even need to do it. My concern is we don't know the impact of the social media feeds until we do it. And I wouldn't have an issue with this coming back after we see that impact. But until we maximize the use of our own tools, I'm just not sure we need to go out and be putting ads in other people's publications at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. I think if it's okay, I'd like to kind of give a bit of a sense of how this came about and the discussions that have happened at the rec committee. It might take me a minute to get through it, but I just want to give you some point of reference for this. So this kind of started, the development of this ask, I guess, started through the development of the goals and objectives of the Recreation Committee. And through that, it had been identified as a priority by the committee to develop a strategy to promote the rentability of our facilities, but not just the rentability of the facilities. It was also intended to promote participation in our Engage Puslinch projects. So also to draw attention to the existing platforms that we have already being launched. And so as the implementation of the goals and objectives took place, a subcommittee was formed within the rec committee for this particular goal. And there's been some really tremendous research and legwork that has gone into it. And in addition to the facility promotion, it's also the idea behind the advertising plan is intended to develop some exposure beyond the Puslinch community to sort of the outer the broader community, to try and draw some people in, and also to promote rentals during the lower periods of use. So it's very targeted. It's to a very specific audience during very specific times, and the intent is to get more revenue streams for rentals. The plan, sorry, I'm just going through my own notes here. The plan, if it was to granted, would be to promote through several different media outlets. Some of those would be Facebook, social media, but then also with a program that Guelph Today has and Puslinch Today has, which are also being advertised by both the City of Guelph and the City of Cambridge. And I will just say that the rec committee and specifically this subcommittee has been extremely passionate about marketing these jewels in our community to produce some revenue generating potential. And the feeling is that is an important thing to do as we open up and come out of these lockdowns from COVID. And so I just wanted to give you some sort of sense of what was where this request came from, because it is, it's not a small ask, and it's not typical of the rec committee to ask for that. But I think there's been some really great work done. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. I understand your concern, Councillor Bulmer. I use social media and it's free for connecting to the community. But I put a lot of value in what Councillor Goyda just mentioned. So I think we should. I would support it. It's important to get some more rentals, but I want to ask staff. It's not just about advertising, because I believe we have reports, we could dig them up, but revenues at one point due to a policy on the rental were down between $25,000 and $30,000 annually. I believe is when we went to only or we were targeting leagues for the ice rental. And I'm pretty sure staff will revise the rental policy and we'll be likely seeing it soon. But is that also a component of trying to get more rentals, is a return to a policy that is more flexible for the public to rent? I don't know if that's for Ms. Hassan or.
Sorry, Mayor Seeley, you're referring to the ORC rink, right?
Just that one specifically.
Yes.
I mean, that's where there was a.
So last year we had a council resolution as part of the budget process that we would enable one-time rentals, and other leagues that want to rent the facility for less than the 8-week rental period. So that has been implemented for this year's rink season.
So that's good news. I hopefully we'll see the fruits of that labor, as we've all seen the reports that we were down quite a bit. As people discover our facilities, they do say they're a great facility and they love it. We've implemented those curtains, so hopefully that'll extend our ice time. So I just didn't want to just put all our eggs in one basket with just advertising. There's still some work to be done, I believe, on the policy end of things. So I believe we have support of the 4,800, but I'll go back around one more time. Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I support the $4,800 to possibly lay Councillor Bowman's concerns. We should ask staff to give us a score sheet on the increase in rental that we got as a result of this increase in advertising.
Okay. Do we need a resolution for that, Mr. CAO, or can staff just include it as part of some of our next reports next year?
You can just include that in the report next year.
All right.
If I could,
I'm coming around. So Councillor Spillis supported the 4,800. Councillor Bailey.
She's muted.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. There she is.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know if this amount could be broken down into phases or if it was all needed in one time. I don't know if Jessica, you could comment on that.
About Ms. White, who prepared that part of the report? Ms. White Fox, or was it Ms. Hassan?
So I think the amount of 4,800 in the spreadsheet, it does show where some of that is going. So towards the social media marketing, towards the paper-based marketing, in the external advertisements. So it is an amount that we're asking for each year to go towards those. So it would be utilized at different times throughout the year, but the full 4,800 will be utilized over the course of the year. I'm not sure if that helps answer the question. It like Councillor Goyda had suggested, there's certain points in the year when we're looking to advertise a little bit more during different peaks in the rental time. So it would be utilized as needed as we put together our calendar for social media, and then as we look at the dates for the different Pusatch today and Guelph today, and those ads, the timing that they should be in there for the different types of events, weddings, that sort of thing. But Councillor Bailey, it would be 4,800 for the year if that's the question.
That is, thank you. That works. I am in support of it. I think it'd be nice to see, see what this will do. We can get the rentals up and get some revenue. That would be really great.
Well, okay, Councillor Bummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I fully support doing marketing to promote the rental of our facilities. I have for a long time. My concern is one of policy. We just recently received a report that said we should, essentially use only our own tools for communications, which of course we also do place ads according to the Planning Act. But there's policy around that. The Planning Act directs how that is done. I guess my concern really here is we're just deciding all of a sudden we're going to start spending money and placing ads somewhere, and who's picking which ones and why. Where's the policy direction? Typically, to me, it should be, if we're going to place an ad with one, why aren't we placing it with another? It's why not? I didn't hear the one an advertiser mentioned. These are.
Let me go to the CEO. So maybe he can address some of his concerns. Mr. CEO, around the policy component of it, should we be developing a policy around this, or it should be incorporated in our media policy?
It would likely be good, yes, if we did develop a list. I know we have a list for our normal media contacts when we issue media releases, those types of things. So maybe we would develop a list of the advertising locations.
Mr. Ballmer?
Yeah, I think that's important because we have to be seen to be fair. These are businesses that we're giving money to. We have to make sure, that we're not picking and choosing winners, and that whoever receives that money, it's been pre-approved. It's just because of the change in what we're doing, I think we need to make sure that we cover off all the appropriate policy corners on this. That's all. So that it's done right. And because it's a significant increase in expenditures and a slightly different direction than what was proposed in the communications policy that we just received, we should proceed as carefully as.
So I believe Councillor Ballmer is proposing a deferral of this budget item until it can be incorporated into our communication policy. Is that correct?
I would be most comfortable with that, so that if we're going to do marketing, there's some parameters around how those places are chosen. If we're going to go beyond just using our existing tools.
Okay, a seconder for that, please, so we can discuss it properly. Councillor Bailey, thank you. All right, Councillor Spoulos, deferring it until we can incorporate it and get some guidance on through the communication policy.
I think staff have a handle of the outlets they wish to canvas for appropriate usage, and I really don't want to micromanage them and how they undertake the work.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I'm actually having a hard time seeing where this does fit into the communication policy that we did see earlier. So I guess I just would like a little more time to see where it fits in and make sure it does kind of correspond with the focus of that. So not saying no, but just seeing where it fits in and make sure it does fit in.
Okay, Councillor Ballmer.
Yeah, I think it's a good. Was this my motion, or you should?
I think your motion. Just commenting on your own motion again.
Oh no, no. I think it's good just so that we so that the public knows how and why their money is going to be spent, and that it's done in a consistent manner with the communications policy, as opposed to what to me appears to be in an inconsistent manner with the policy we just received. So
right, Councillor Guida.
Yeah, I can appreciate that in order to be transparent and fair, that perhaps there should be some policy wording. I do foresee that it is perhaps, yeah, I don't want to micromanage either. I guess one of the things I'm thinking of is certain outlets have different, I don't even know how to word it, but for instance, if you spend a certain amount with Guelph today, they provide, things like spotlight articles that remain on the website. They will complete your branding ads. They'll do the graphics, the ad design. They guarantee a certain amount of views, analytics, all of that stuff. Whereas something like the Puss Lunch Pioneer might not have the resources or the capability to provide that same type of objective. So I understand the need perhaps for some policy wording. I'm just not sure, based on what the various outlets are providing and based on what it is that the township is looking to achieve, how they might all compare apple to apple. And I don't know if that's making sense, but it's just where I see a little bit of a challenge for staff to address all of those things in a policy.
Mr. CEO, I came to you once and you mentioned that it would be a good idea to have policy. Can this component of the budget be approved with a caveat that staff develop the policy around the expenditure to the local media, and can that be done within the budget timeframe, or could this at least be budgeted for and recognize that the money won't be spent until that policy is updated and brought back to council?
I would suggest, given all the other things going on right now, we might not have time to complete a new policy before the budget end. But with respect to your last point, I would suggest that it be conditionally approved and incorporated in the budget, but that no funds be spent until such time as you approve the policy that we could develop after the budget process.
Mr. Ballmer, would you be amicable to that change to your motion?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO and Mr. Chair, because I understand Councillor Sapoulis's concerns regarding tying things up in bureaucracy. That's not my intent. But to Councillor Goyda's point, about the services provided by some of these places, I agree. But also, if you remember in their communications report, we're also spending money. The proposal was for us to invest in tools for staff to do many of those creative things themselves. So I just want to make sure we're making maximal utilization of existing investments before we start making additional investments. That's all. So thank you.
No problem. Ms. White Fox, what do you have captured as your understandings, or I guess for this component of the budget? Or is it Mrs. Sand? I don't know who looks after it.
So I have something, but I may have missed the seconder. I have Councillor Ballmer as moving the motion.
I think it was Councillor Goyda.
Goyda?
Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey.
Oh, Bailey, that's right. It was Bailey, Councillor Bailey.
And what I have drafted is that the Parks and Facility Advertising 2022 permanent base budget increase amount of $4,800 be conditionally approved, and that no funds be spent until such time that the township external advertising be incorporated into the township advertising communication and media relations, policy.
All right. Okay, final comments. Councillor Spillis, comfortable with that and in favor?
I'm not going to vote in favor because I think it's micromanaging. I think we're losing an opportunity for staff to get into things like the hockey season and that sort of thing. I'd be more comfortable with a report that tells us how we spent the money, where we spent it, and what the increased revenue was as a result of expenditure.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
Okay, that was interesting. I turn this off. I had a question about the follow-up with it. So that what Councillor Sapoulis just said ties in with what I was thinking there. So you're suggesting, Councillor Sapoulis, accepting this
Councillor
not-
Sepoulis is not in favor of deferring or approving it conditionally. Councillor Sepoulis wants to approve it as presented at $4,800. And the motion on the floor right now is to defer until staff can put the policy together. Councillor Sepoulis?
And my suggestion was to have a report at year end.
And report at year end, so.
Still staff resources, just at a different time.
Sorry, say that again, please.
Still using staff resources, but just in a different time frame.
Right, but the money, they'd be able to spend the money sooner. They'd be able to spend the money as of January 1st, theoretically, or whenever the budget's approved. Sorry, Mary, I probably just made you squirm there. You can't spend the money until the budget's approved, but early first quarter versus Mr. Schwendinger, if you could throw a dart at the dartboard, when would you be able to supply the supplemental reports for this budget line? Would it be second, third, fourth quarter kind of thing?
I'd say for sure we could have it done by the start of the second quarter.
It's not bad. But we're going to miss the ice season this year. Anything follow-ups, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, well, I'd like to ensure there's some sort of advertising happening as we come out of COVID. So if this is going to delay it until second quarter, we've kind of missed an opportune time to advertise, unless the policy, the communication policy component can be implemented sooner.
No, he said, he already mentioned that's with everything going on, that's not a possibility, unfortunately. Second
So
quarter next year.
Yeah, so in that respect, I think I would approve this amount now so that the funds are there to be used, you know, right away hopefully coming out of COVID in the new year.
Okay, Councillor Bummer.
Thank you. And just a reminder from staff, when is the proposal approval date for this budget? Is it in February or March of next year?
The past practice has been January or February.
Yeah, because the public meeting is the end of January. So we're looking at the money wouldn't be coming available till into February next year anyway. So we'd miss the hockey season. Okay, no, I'm in favor. I think it's important to put some direction around how we spend other people's money. Thank you.
Councillor Goida.
Okay, just one quick question. I really don't mean to throw a curveball here, but is there any benefit in having, this is being requested as a permanent base budget increase, but is there any benefit in perhaps making this a one-time budget item and see how it goes and have the chance to write the policy, and then if all goes well and council approves, then next year moving forward, adding it as a permanent base budget increase? Does that take any pressure off of getting this policy done, you know, within the next couple of months? That's a question for staff.
You're making my job a little more difficult. Procedurally, Ms. White Fox, we have a resolution on the floor that we're dealing with. That sounds to me either like another amendment, or can we deal with that while we have this other one on the floor?
So it sounds like Councillor Goida is just making a friendly amendment to the word permanent base budget increase, just to have it say one-time base budget increase. And then we still have it that it be conditionally approved. That's still the motion on the floor, conditionally approved until the policy has been updated.
I'm gonna pump the brakes here for a quick
I'm
second.
not necessarily making that suggestion. I'm asking if that I'm asking if that assists at all in buying more time to put the policy in place.
Yeah, even if it's not your intention, it does.
Okay, fair enough.
So I need some clarification, because I was leaning towards Councillor Sepoulis's position. However, Councillor Bulmer brings up a very valid point. the only way these funds would be available immediately would be a pre-budget approval. And so even if we approve it as presented, necessary confirmation that this money wouldn't be available until end of January, mid-February.
Yes, so you could request a pre-budget approval if you would like this money to be utilized as part of this ice season.
Oh boy. Okay. Awesome. Let me just get my thoughts.
Can I just
Go.
add to, sorry, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
The rec committee doesn't meet again anyway until February. So realistically speaking, I don't know that the rec committee can put this together before the ice season in any case.
And if I
Councillor
could,
Spillis, I can just go back to Councillor Spillis because he's more the advocate for the other way. What are your thoughts on that now, knowing the funds wouldn't be available until, beginning of February and the rec committee not meeting again?
My answer to that is that staff can always ask for pre-approval a certain amount of funds to get us going this year in time for the hockey season. That would make prudent. The hockey rink, I think, doesn't open up until January, but certainly people are going to start booking it now. And the sooner you can get the advertising out, the better it is for us. I like Councillor Goyda's idea that we move ahead, and I can make a motion to that effect, that once we deal with Councillor Bowman's motion, that we approve this on a one-time, subject to a satisfactory report reviewing the outcome of the advertising against the revenues coming forward.
If this is something that will be supported in future years, I'd rather it be, I don't like doing the one time, because then when Mary builds her Lego house of the budget, that money gets allotted to something else, and then we have to do another budget increase next year for this. So I prefer just keep it in, because it doesn't change anything. The budget increase will be the increase. And if next year it's not working, we can remove it. So that would be my advice. We're still going to deal with the deferral. Councillor Ballmer, I believe you had something you wanted to say.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in my mind, we're looking at the difference between February and April. We're going to come back with a social media policy. It's in staff's hands anyway. They're working on it anyway. There were a few updates or amendments that were suggested. That's going to come back when it comes back, and when it does come back, it'll just include a mention on this part. It's not a significant amount of extra work, I don't believe, and it's not a significant delay. If we're looking at the difference between February and April, it seems to be a reasonable expectation to make sure that when we're doing this, it's done in a transparent and consistent manner. That's all I'm asking for. It's not putting it off forever or not having staff write an entire new policy. Just that I consider advertising to be communications, and I just think it should be ensure that it's done in a manner that's consistent with the communications policy that we develop. And that's
Ms. White Fox.
I would just a thought. So staff have taken the recommendations that have come out of council from the last meeting on the communications policy, and we're preparing to bring forward that amended policy to the November 24th meeting. Whether or not that's approved at that meeting, it could be approved to get our social media program up and running this year, because there are very, very low costs to getting that program established, and we could get some advertising out for the rink and those sort of things. And then staff could take that away into the new year and incorporate the piece that Councillor Ballmer is suggesting. So the piece about the external advertising. So we could have an approved policy this year, get kind of up and running, and with the plan of staff bringing that back in the new year with an amendment to include this piece in time for the budget approval.
Okay. All right. So, Councillor Goyda, did I give you another opportunity to speak? I'm sorry if I didn't.
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Where I stand right now is, I don't know. I want to see, I don't know. I don't want to miss this ice season, but I see the value in making sure the policy is done right. But I could justify, allowing it to happen 1 year just so we can help get some more rentals. But that policy could be adopted by November. I think,
Would it help if I change, if I meant just change my motion to match? I even, what the clerk just mentioned fits exactly in with what I'm trying to achieve. Where what the social media policy comes forward, can be adopted by council in time to use our own tools to promote the facilities this fall. And while we're still working through the budget, they bring in the additional clause to deal with external advertising in time with the budget. No delays, and then that policy is consistent with our communications policy.
and then
You
in my
get your-
mind,
everybody.
sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry, Councillor Bowman, I thought there's a little pause there, probably the internet. So then, once that's approved on the 24th, there's a real possibility that we could see a pre-budget approval request from staff to spend the $4,800. Is that fair to say, Ms. Hassan or Ms. Whitefox?
Mr. Chair, I don't think we would ask for pre-budget approval. I think that we would need that time between November and then into next year when budget is approved to adapt our policy to include the external advertising. So I think the timing really works out because it will give staff time to incorporate that clause into the existing policy in time for budget. So I don't think we would be asking for pre-budget approval.
All right. Can you tell me what your understanding of the resolution is now? We had a deferral, but I believe Councillor Balmer modified it slightly.
So I think that the resolution could remain the same. The word conditional maybe we could work with, but it is that we wouldn't spend any funds until the policy incorporates this external advertising, which is in line with what we've talked about for the timeline. So we would still bring forward our social media policy on the 24th, get some advertising going this year, and then the $4,800 would still be spent conditionally upon incorporating that clause into the policy next year.
Okay, I think I understand it. The advertising would be through our social media platforms and things like that in the first stages of it being approved. And
Correct. Yeah, we can do that all at a very low cost. We wouldn't need any pre-budget approval for that at all.
Okay, so that's the resolution. Last time around, Councillor Spoulos.
No, I still don't support it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
No concerns. Sounds
So
great.
you're in favor of the resolution as Ms. Whitefox described?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goya,
I can support that. I'm good.
thank you. That means I don't have to be the tiebreaker. Took the pressure off me. Okay, so you have your direction there, staff? Everybody's good? Okay, so now we're going to go back to the agenda. And the next few pages, which is 35. So it starts with just a bunch of comments from staff, what they were incorporating into the budget for this year. So page 35, 36 of the agenda. I don't know if that, any questions there? Excuse me. Give me 1 second.
Did you say page 5, Mr. Chair, of the report?
No,
Sorry.
he's not there yet. He's at page 4 of the report.
Yeah, page 4 of the report. Or I was giving the pages in the agenda. Give me 1 second here. Looking a little bit here. Here we go. So not seeing any comments on those items. We're on page 5. It actually starts on the end of page 4 of the report. And here I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Hassan. And she'll be available for your questions. So the idea is she will go through each numerical item. Some of them have already been dealt with because we did it through the resolution earlier. So I wouldn't expect any further conversation on those, but I saw your hand up, Councillor Bummer.
Yeah, I had a question on page 5, but
Okay.
if we're going to go through it line by line, we may come to it.
Yeah, so I'll just hand that over to Ms. Hassan now, and she can, real quick summary on each one, and she'll be available for questions.
Okay, so I'm just on page 37 of 143 of the agenda package.
That's correct.
Okay, so just a quick summary of what the proposed base budget includes. It includes an increase in salaries, benefits, and shared service agreement costs based on previously approved council service levels. And those are noted in the page in the report. It currently included the 4% cost of living adjustment. However, that will be reviewed in accordance with the council resolution prepared today. It also includes base budget costs related to salary grid movements, increase in Ontario minimum wage, the 2022 municipal election, training for all committees of council, mandatory employer benefits, cell phone replacements, fuel, implementation of fiber internet in the township's municipal office, additional signage that's required based on the parking bylaw that was recently passed, and other base budget contract cost increases. Sorry, are there any questions to date based on what the base budget includes? Or should I just go through items 1 to 6?
That's good enough for now. Those are items 1 through 6, I believe, and I'll open up to council. Councillor Spoulos, any questions on those items?
We didn't cover off item 4, 5, and 6. I can comment on my comments. I can make comments on those if that's what you want.
Well, you know what? I'm going to back up. Any comments on item number 1, increase in salaries? I would assume. See any head nods, shakes, no comments. Okay, number 2, that's coming back to us. Number 3, base budget costs related to salary grid, municipal elections, cell phones. Comments, questions on that one?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, what's number 2?
2 is the 4% COLA, which we're going to receive a report back on. So I feel we don't need to discuss that. Number 3, any comments on the base budget costs related to those items listed? And then we're going to have conversations around. All right, number 4. I'll give a little preamble for number 4. Through TAPMO hiring a public relations specialist. We had all those meetings with the MPs and a couple ministers advocating for proper aggregate assessment. Upon completion of that contract, we asked the lobbyists, where they thought TAPMO needed to go next. And their recommendation was that we needed to raise our profile so that we're considered a stakeholder at the provincial government. So through those discussions, the executive recognized that funding was challenging for TAPMO. We were always reactive, and the idea was to not build up a war chest, but at least have some funding in place that would allow us to get ahead of some of these challenges around the aggregate industry. And through the discussions, it was tied to a 1%, equivalent of 1% of your aggregate levy that you receive. So similar to OSSGA, their fee structure, from my understanding, is based on production. So the bigger producers pay more, less producing members pay less. And that's what came out of this. Now, tomorrow, I have a meeting with TAPMO executive, and the fee schedule is going to be presented and adopted. And if there's a much healthier report and a breakdown, and it shows each member's contribution. So it's capped at $5,000 regardless of your levy. And I believe it's got a minimum component of $250. And I would hope that council would support this fee structure, as TAPMO's doing some great work for us, and we're trying to get those assessments fixed. And other than that, I'll open up to council questions. Councilor Spoulos?
I'm in favor of this. The question for you, Mr. Mayor, is staff are asking whether or not this should be a one-time cost or annual recurring cost. I was wondering if you can comment on that.
It would be an annual recurring cost, Councilor Spoulos, and that would probably be evident in the report once we approve it tomorrow at the TAPMO meeting.
Okay, so I would support being annual recurring cost. And I guess a question for Ms. Hassan, can this be funded from the levy we receive? This is the gravel pit funding we get?
Can I speak to that first, please?
Sure.
through the TAMO meeting, there was a lot of anxiety about any of the levy being used to pay the fee. And I assured the other executive members that that would not be the case. OSSGA is pushing hard to ensure that that levy, all of it is used for capital expenditures. So I would caution, they will light a fire on me if I go back and tell them that we used levy. It was even difficult when developing the equation to figure out each municipality's fee to even have the word levy in the equation. We probably spent an hour trying to talk around that word. So.
Okay, on that basis, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine with the 5,000 it being a reoccurring item.
Thank you, Councillor Spillis. Councillor Bailey?
Yep, I am in favor of recurring 5,000.
Thank you. Councillor Ballmer?
Thank you. Just trying to figure out, you said that regardless it was going to be capped at 5,000, suggesting that when I look at that 5,000, if it's 1%, that our levy was proposed to be 500,000, but I thought our levy was around 4 something. We just rounded it up for convenience sake.
I can speak to that. So the amount of the levy that's budgeted, it's based on a few years of production data. And so it's based on an average, but we have been receiving in the $500,000 range in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I noticed it went up and I couldn't remember by how much because it went up quite a few tons, quite a few million tons. So.
And I believe Wellington County, when they put the fee schedule together, they use the torque numbers available on the website. So I'll be able to share that with, well, I could share it today. It's in the agenda for TAMO, but I'll ensure that I get it to you at some point in the next few days.
So, I just have some, sorry, I don't mean to take up all the time today, but this is in addition to, whenever we hold the chair, those costs are usually borne by that host municipality, but in this case, those are going to be borne by the county this time because of the broad nature of the concerns.
They're going to be borne by the county because I asked them to nicely.
Okay. No, that's very good.
I recognize that our staff was already overworked, and I thought they'd be very, very upset with me if I threw more on their plate. I approached the CAO of the county prior to, knowing that I was going to likely become the chair of TAPMO. I spoke with the county and asked if they would provide the supplemental resources through staff, and they were willing to do that, and I'm truly appreciative of it. But typically, Councillor Bulmer, you are right. It doesn't matter about the scope of what they're working on. The host municipalities staff are, they run the treasury part of it. They run the agendas, all of that. So.
But I only mentioned it because of the amount of work the county has done on the assessment piece, which makes that more appropriate. So, typically we would be facing both this and those other costs, but the situation has changed. So this is what our cost would be as opposed to what it might have been before the county agreed to take on is that correct?
Well, I see what you're saying. We probably would have had more cost than this amount if staff were required to do all the work. Kim Courts at the county, she has been working a lot on cleaning up the website and all sorts of different components. I'm not being critical of the previous municipality that was the chair, but thank goodness the county's got a lot of resources.
Just trying to put the number in context. That's all. So thank you very much. This is one where I think it's important. The benefit of the outcome, if successful, will be significant. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor Goyda?
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Number 5, any comments on the reduction in insurance premium costs for Mr. Sam? None. Number 6, we're going to deal with shortly. We're going to go through the grant program. Any comments? Councillor Spillis?
Yes, I'd like to get back to basics. In other words, we stick with the 0.5% of the previous year's taxation levy and adjust whatever we think is appropriate for all the grant funding.
Okay. Any other comment on that? No. All right. So that's the end of that. Anything else did you have on page 5, Councillor Bulmer?
Yeah, I thought I saw something on there about a work plan, and it doesn't, although it doesn't affect this year's levy, I saw something about updating the township's parking bylaw to be in line with the county bylaw. And I thought we'd already completed that, and I thought I saw that on the work plan for 2022 or 2023, and I thought they are already in line. I didn't know what that was. What was that with what we were going to do?
I think, are you talking about the sign bylaw update to reflect Wellington County bylaw for consistency? Is that what you're referring to?
Oh, the sign bylaw. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I misinterpreted as being the parking bylaw.
Yeah, that's at the end of your driveway sign, I believe is the intent. Is that right?
Well, the roadside, like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes, the sign bylaw. I agree. Yeah, it needs to be done because there is some diversity in language between the signs that are permitted in the county or the township. So yeah, okay, no, thank you for the clarification.
All right, so page 6 of the report, we've dealt with these items. Cambridge Fire Service. Fires contract, that's good. All right, any comments on the discretionary reserve contributions? So we're on page 7 of the report. This is from Mary as well. Councillor Spoulos.
Yeah, just wondering when will a consolidated budget come back to us for approval, because incorporating all the other things that we need to look at as well.
Ms. Hassan?
So the returned assessment roll from MPAC and the median calculations from Opta will likely be available in December or January. I'm still confirming with Opta. And so the goal is to hopefully provide it at the December meeting, the December council agenda package, depending on when Opta releases those median calculations.
Great, thank you.
Any further conversation? No. Okay. The next component of the agenda is the COLA. We're getting reports back on that. All right, so. Ms. Hassan, do we need to discuss this Building Canadian Firearms Association, those fees? They're just included, right?
They are just included, and I'm just providing for council's information what's been changed.
So we just discussed the top area producing municipalities fee, but there's also the Canadian Farm Builders Association and the Heritage Committee, Community Heritage Ontario. So council's information, if you have any concerns, now it's time to speak up. All right. So Schedule A. We are on page 43 of the agenda. Is everybody caught up? Yeah. And under the administration, any questions or concerns for the proposed budget for the administrative department? Councilor Bulmer? Oh, sorry.
My question's answered, Mr. Mayor, so I'm good, fine.
Okay. Councilor Bulmer, you had something?
Yes, thank you. Perhaps it's more general, it expands across a few departments. A number of them show FT wages expenses going up 8%. Perhaps I could get a better handle as to why they're showing at 8%.
Ms. Hassan?
I'm just looking in my detail. So in the administration department, it's just normal step movements within the department and the COLA of 4%. The part-time wages, it includes the 2022 crossing guard, which wasn't budgeted last year, but approved by council throughout the year. So that's the main difference in administration.
Okay, so it'd be the same in each department, then it's a combination of proposed cost of living adjustment and a natural step for some people making a step in their pay grid.
Right, and those other items that I had discussed at the beginning of the report related to by law enforcement and the crossing guard and those other items at the beginning of the report that have been approved by council throughout the year.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I have another one that sort of spans
Sure.
across a number of departments. Communications and internet. On some departments, I know maybe it's a reallocation that's going up over 100%. In some places, it's only going up a little. Is that just as a result of reallocation, or has there been some significant change?
So Councillor Ballmer, I can just speak to that. There are some, it relates to the cell phone purchase and the fiber internet at the municipal office. So for the finance and building department, it includes an increase in internet costs related to fiber internet based on the contract that we obtained, but also it relates to the cell phone renewal that we budgeted for 2022 based on those cell phones that have a 3-year, that have been in the life cycle for 3 or more years.
Okay, so that makes sense. The last one that I guess would be for an admin, it would be, there's a significant, like it's about I guess a significant increase in the expected revenue line for admin. What do we attribute that to?
So that relates to just based on 3-year actuals related to the routine disclosure fee that was established in 2021. Now that we have some actuals in our system, we're able to increase that revenue, that recovery based on actuals. Same with the engineering, environmental, and legal fees recovered.
Okay, so it's not just a pulled from the air number. It's I like the sound of that when you've got actuals to base it on. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around administrative? No? All right, next, building department. Questions or comments? Page 45 of the agenda. Okay. All right, bylaw. Okay. Corporate. Let's see. Council. Not seeing anything. Good. Elections. Finance. Any questions for finance? Councillor Ballmer.
Thank you so much. Again, advertising and tax sale expenses, they're proposed. Is there something unusual that's happening there, or is this again just bringing actuals into the mix?
Yes, so Councillor Ballmer, it's another one looking at actuals and how many properties meet that threshold in accordance with the Municipal Act to commence the tax sale process with real tax. But you'll also notice that although the expenditure has increased, the recovery portion of it has also increased. And that relates to being able to add those fees to the tax account.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Oops. All right. Fire and rescue. Any questions? Anybody want to talk about boots? That was a joke. Councilor Spillis.
Yeah, I noticed in the motor vehicle emergency responses, we put in 93,000 revenue, and so far we're only getting just under 30,000. Is it likely to pick up? In other words, the revenue from that area?
My expectation is that as the traffic count increases post-COVID, plus the winter weather, I expect that the revenue will start to change. Not that I wish accidents on anybody, but it's just a way of life with this 401 corridor. And as I said at the previous council meeting, I think that as construction creeps in, your number of highway calls is going to go up significantly.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Heritage Committee? Library? All right. Municipal Office? ORC? All right, Parks? Sorry, was that a hand, Councillor Bailey? I was looking away.
Yeah,
No.
sorry.
Yeah, you have something for Parks?
Not for parks, it was for the orc.
Okay.
Just a, I guess looking for confirmation that the gymnasium rental budgeted number, is that reasonable? Coming out of COVID?
Councillor Bailey, it's in line with 2019 actuals pre-COVID, so I think so.
Maybe with advertising.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. Parks? PCC? PDAC? Planning?
Question on planning.
Sure, Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed for several years now, we've been always put money in the SIP grant line, and I have no or few applications. Instead of having this as a recurring budget item, should we maybe consider this more as a SIP grant reserve that we just keep a certain minimum balance in? And if we get an application one year, all we have to put in the next year is to top it back up again to maintain it at a certain level? Or should we just keep having it as a, as we do, keep putting money in the budget every year?
Councillor Bulmer, that is actually an operating carry forward item. It was an item that was approved through the county's BRNE funding from a couple years ago. So it is an item that's in our operating carry forward reserve currently, and there is actually a report that will be coming forward to council related to an application that we received under this program for 2021.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further questions there? All right. Public Works. Nothing. Recreation Committee. Source Water. All right. And the last one is expenditures, I guess. All right. Okay, let's get down to business. Ms. Hassan, remind me, what page do the grant applications start on?
Page 83 of 143.
Oh. Okay, so we're on page 2 of the report, which is page 84 of the agenda. Ms. Whitefox?
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, we have the resolution for the report FIN 2021-036, if we want to take care of that first before we move on to the grant report.
Do we not need the grant funding? I guess it doesn't matter. Okay. I thought we had to approve the grants first, but that's fine. Can you read that for me, please?
Sure, I can share my screen as well. We've made some adjustments to it. It's the recommendation out of the report, but with our adjustments.
Sure, you don't mind sharing it?
Sure. So I believe we're still looking for just a mover and a seconder for it. The first resolution that we passed was relating to the cost of living adjustment. So that one I removed from this recommendation.
Right.
So that report FIN 2021-036 regarding the 22 proposed operating budget be received, and that $48,230 remain in the operating budget associated with the Cambridge Fire Services contract. and that council authorized pre-budget approval of $74,424 for the proposed new equipment operator position in order to commence recruitment. And that council authorized a cost of living adjustment of 2% as a placeholder increase until such time that staff report back on a more equitable method of calculating the cost of living adjustment. And that council approves the 2022 one-time base budget increase amount to $6,019 as outlined below, to be funded by the 2021 general surplus. So that includes the Microsoft Office licenses. And I've just reworded the wording here for the fire safety boots reserve to replace boots as determined by the fire chief. And that was in the amount of $3,500. The council approves the 2022 permanent base budget increase amount to $9,575 as outlined below. And that includes the reoccurring cost for the Microsoft Office licenses in the annual amount of $1,275. And then the fire safety boot reserve to replace boots as determined by the fire chief in the amount of $3,500. And that the top aggregate producing municipalities of Ontario membership fee of $5,000 be a reoccurring annual cost in the operating budget.
Perfect. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconder. Seconder, so Councillor Bailey. Okay. Any discussion? Councillor Spillis,
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Bailey,
Nope, it's all good.
Councillor Balmer,
No questions.
Councillor Goida.
I'm good.
Okay, all in favor, Councillor Spillis.
Sorry, can I just interrupt for 1 second? I think I didn't see a couple of items.
Okay. Yes.
Ms. White Fox, can you just share the screen again?
Sure.
So I think the 9575 noted at the top should be changed because it doesn't include the advertising, right?
Oh, you're right, correct. So this should be minus the 4,800.
Yeah. So I've just done the total right now and it is 4775.
I believe, didn't that 9775, it was because of the TAPMO, $5,000.
No, the TAPMO 5 grand is already included in the base budget.
Okay,
However, and then the advertising of 4,800, that was a separate resolution, Ms. White Fox?
Yes, it's just below.
Excellent. Okay.
So, and just the one change, adjusting that $9,000 figure to have the 4,800 removed. That's what the resolution now looks like.
okay. I had a mover and a seconder, correct?
Yes, Councillor Spillis and Councillor Bailey.
Okay, both, where do they end off there before Mrs. Sand? Was a Councillor Balmer, I believe?
In
Or
favor.
no, we're calling in favor, yeah. Councillor Goida,
In favor.
that's carried. Do we get that right, Ms. White Fox? Did I get everybody?
Yes, all good.
Okay, back to the grant application. All right, page 2 of that report, or page 84. And we'll just go one by one. Aberfoyle Agricultural Society, they're requesting $3,000. Councillor Spillis,
Approved.
Councillor Bailey,
Yeah, agree.
Councillor Balmer,
Support, yeah.
Councillor Goida.
Approve.
Okay, Aberfoyle's Farmers Market, 3,000. Councillor Spillis,
Approved.
Councillor Bailey,
Approve.
Councillor Balmer,
Approve.
Councillor Goida,
Approve.
Friends of Mill Creek. They're asking for $3,000. Councillor Spillis,
I don't approve it on the basis that last 2 years have been COVID and they have not done any work. And the prior year, we did grant them $1,500. So that's still in the kitty. Plus also they have a healthy reserve somewhere around $50,000. So I really have difficulty giving them money to put in a bank, so to speak.
Mr. CEO.
I just wanted to check something procedurally, Ms. White Fox. Do we need to have separate resolutions here because of some pecuniaries that were declared earlier in the meeting? Should we
Yes,
be breaking this into separate motions?
Yes, I have 3 separate motions prepared. So the first excludes both Friends of Mill Creek as well as Sunrise. And then I have Friends of Mill Creek as the second resolution and Sunrise as the third, just to enable the most amount of councillors to vote.
Thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Spillis made those comments. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. I would support the $3,000. Although there hasn't been any activity in the past, it doesn't mean that the creek doesn't still need some work done on it. And I don't know if they're going to be, taking on any extra rangers or what the plan is coming out of COVID, but I would still support the 3,000.
Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I think so the Ranger program wasn't able to operate for the last 2 years in a row. And I think what's not mentioned in the application, but even before COVID, there was the oil spill, which also created additional challenges for the Ranger program. And it limited the work that could be done. When I look at the budget that they've provided for the upcoming year, they're looking to operate even with the grant at a loss. And I feel that the long-term outlook of the Ranger program is at risk if there isn't some grant money funded for them. And I think that would be a real loss to our community and to the kids that participate in the program. So I would support this.
Okay. Yeah, I support it. It's great points you brought up, Councillor Goyda. That creek means a lot to this community, and yeah, I recognize that as well. I'm sure Councillor Spillis does as well. It's just, times are tough. We do have to find some savings here and there. So, PLCA, is everybody back in on that one, right? Nobody's on a pecuniary on that one. Oh, let's do that one. No. We're going to do that one at the end. Sorry, we're not doing PLCA. We're going to leave that one in Sunrise to the end. Wellington County Plowmen's Association. It's for $180. Councillor Spillis.
No problem, approved.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Approve.
Councillor Balmer.
Approve.
Councillor Goyda.
Approved.
Okay, now we will do Sunrise, which takes out 2 individuals. All right, so we have a request of 12,500 for Sunrise. Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I really like to keep to our cap of 0.5%. So my recommendation is that we total up what we approved. Take that, subtract that from the 22.5, and then whatever's left over, allocate it in the ratio of the request between the Puslin Lake and the Sunrise. Be 1/3, 2/3.
Sorry, Ms. Hassan, do you have the totals that we've approved already?
Yes, so I've noted 3,000 for Aberfoyle Agricultural Society, 3,000 for Aberfoyle Farmers Market, 3,000 for Friends of Mill Creek Grand River, 180 for Wellington County Plowmen's Association. So that equals 9,180.
So that leaves 12,849, I believe.
Yes.
And if it's in a ratio of 1/3, 2/3, that would be 42.83 for Puslin Lake and 85.66 for Sunrise.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
That was exactly what I came up with.
I'm supportive of that, Councillor Spillis. So unfortunately, I think we made the decision for PLCA without the other 2 members here, but that's just the way it's going to go. Did you capture that, Ms. Hassan?
Sorry, just give me one moment to make sure I. Sorry, what were the numbers for PLCA versus Sunrise?
I had 4283 and 8566.
Yep, so I have 4283 for PLCA and 8566 for Sunrise.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, sorry, Ms. Hassan.
Mhm.
We're only discussing Sunrise's component here because we have
Okay.
two members on a conflict. So by default, that leaves a certain amount for the other two members to come and discuss. But you have the numbers correct, I believe.
Okay, yep.
Okay, now we'll welcome back our other members. Mr. Goyda. So I don't know if you were listening, but essentially we've left some money for the PLCA at around $4,200, and that keeps us within our policy for the grants of 0.5% of last year's tax levy. So, and are you supportive of that for PLCA? Mr. Willis?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Councillor Bailey?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Councillor Balmer?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Goya?
Yes.
All right, now on to the resolutions. I'll try not to give this up. Ms. White Fox.
Okay, so the first resolution is that report FIN 2021-039 regarding the 22 grant application be received and that council approves the grant allocations amounting to $10,463 as outlined below. Aberfoyle Agricultural Society, 3,000, Aberfoyle Farmers Market, 3,000, Puslin Lake Conservation Association, 4,283, and Wellington County Plowmen's Association, 180.
Okay, can you move for that, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
Favor.
Ms. carried. Ms. White Fox?
Okay, the next, Councillor Balmer has declared a conflict, and this is that council approves the grant allocation amounting to $3,000 as outlined below. Friends of Mill Creek, Grand River Association, $3,000.
Mover for that, please. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Goyda. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos?
All in favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Goyda? Okay, next.
And the last, both Councillor Balmer and Councillor Goyder have both declared that council approves the grant allocations amounting in $8,566 as outlined below. Sunrise Therapeutic Riding and Learning Center, Category 3 grant application for $8,566.
Okay, can I mover for that? Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos?
In favor.
Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
In favor, that's carried. Okay. Now I'll just go back to Ms. Hassan. Is there any item that we've missed or you need clarification on?
I don't believe so. Sorry, that resolution, just having it in the three, I just like to double check with Ms. Hoyt Fox. Are you able to put it up on the screen just to make sure that we captured the right totals?
Yes, just one moment. So this is the first.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay.
Just a question, just make sure staff confirms that it adds up to the 0.5% and that's, we're good.
Yes, the 22,029 is based on 0.5% of the prior year tax levy.
And the numbers we approved add up to that number?
Yes, I've done it on Excel on my end and they do add up to 22,029.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. How about a 10-minute break before we do the last report? Is everybody okay with that? All right, we'll see you in 10 minutes, which is 1:05, please. If you're ready, I'm going to ask. All right, we'll start a quick roll call after a brief recess. Councillor Spoolis.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Balmer.
Present.
And Councillor Goida.
Present.
All right, we have a parks proposed level of service policy for public works and parks facilities. Mr. Fowler.
I could speak to it first. I'll just give the general intro. and
sorry,
then If
sorry.
there's any
That's right.
specific questions, he could answer those. So the intent of this policy is just to document what we do in terms of levels of service. So it's all in one place in one document. This is kind of a best practice that a number of municipalities do is to have this all as a document available. There were some typos that I had in there, and Councillor Balmer graciously pointed it out to me, and I thank him for that, and those have been corrected. And so the version that if you're in agreement, or if you feel something should be clarified, we could answer some questions, but if you're in agreement, we would be prepared to have a resolution to formally adopt this policy as well.
Okay, Councillor Spoolis.
Yeah, no, I'm happy it's all in one place. Before, just trying to call up staff to find out what we do here and there, and I'm glad it's articulated. I really don't have any comments other than there was one typo. There was a table here, probably Councilor Bowman picked it up. There's reference to table 14 when it's fact table 12. So that's on page 19. That's the only comment I had.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't really have any questions pertaining to it. I think it's great that this is all in one spot, and I'm just curious. I assume it goes, once adopted, it would go on the website for residents to refer to as well.
That's correct.
Okay, that's great. I have no questions. Thank you.
Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I got to take up some time. I didn't send in my questions yet. So let's see. I must admit, what I do like, as Councillor Spoolis said, is pulling this all together, and I like the fact that each section has an objective statement. But I just wanted to get my head around. So this is pulling together all the pieces that we had service levels developed as part of the asset management plan, and are those service levels reflected in this, or is this putting it out a different service level than those regarding roads and things?
My understanding is that they are the same.
That's great. Let's see. Yeah, so to help me understand the winter maintenance objectives or service levels, what are the current response times? We had that discussion a little bit earlier, but we're pretty much rolling right away now. So even though it says we have 12 hours to respond, we're more than meeting this minimum standard now, I think, was Mr. Fowler.
Oh, you're muted.
Was that for Mr. Fowler?
Mr. Councilor Bowmer's muted.
He's muted. Can't hear him.
He's not talking anymore.
To me?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was listening. I was waiting for a response from Mr. Fowler there regarding the fact that we are. What are our response times currently? 12 hours is our stated objective. What is our current response time for snow?
Our response time for when a storm commences is within 1 hour. After the snowfall is completed, it is within 2 hours that trucks are on the road. Keep in mind that there's also trucks employed overnight, the midnight shift. So we have ongoing equipment moving through at the beginning, the middle, and the duration of the storm.
No, that's great. And I got to compliment the guys on what a great job they do to keep the roads clean. That's the one thing I've never heard a complaint about is that our roads are always, the only challenge people have is they can get out along our roads and then they hit the neighboring roads and wonder why they left home. So thank you. The other question, I noticed that the definition of boulevard is is interesting. It's a little different from maybe what we might have thought of typically as a boulevard. It's from the shoulder to the property line. And the standard indicates that the property owner is responsible for maintenance of that boulevard. If we're now going to be mowing 1.2 meters of that or have been and continue to be, does that mean that they're responsible for the cost of removing any trees and things in that remaining part of the boulevard if we're going to make them responsible for the maintenance of the boulevard?
I believe that definition, and maybe we should clarify that. That's for in the urban areas where there is a curb, where the property owner does the maintenance, and in the rural areas is when we do that 1.4 meter from the shoulder width. So maybe we should just clarify the boulevard in the urban area.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, because I was thinking about myself. And, oh, geez, I got a lot of trees in there I might have to deal with. I don't know if this would be the place to put it, but Mr. Fowler will know what I'm talking about here regarding when there's work proposed to be done on the roadside or in the rural boulevard, let's say, where a property owner has been maintaining the roadside right up to the paved portion, and the township proposes to do work in there. It indicates in the standard again that the township will put it back to being a grass surface unless otherwise stated in a contract. What I'd like to see is a policy here that where a resident has been maintaining the roadside as part of their front lawn, that we notify them ahead of doing that work, and notify and inform them of what the proposed rehabilitation of that area is going to be. So if they're currently using it as their front lawn or maintaining it as part of their front lawn, and we're proposing to take it and make into a ditch and leave it as a ditch, that at least they're informed of that prior to the work being done. Or if it's going to be cleaned out or dug out and then put back, that they're informed of that as well. Is this be the right place to put a policy like that, so that we give those kind of residents a bit of notice on the digging up their front lawn?
That's correct, Mr. Bomer. Currently, our practice is that we inform any homeowner. We try to in several weeks' notice, just to let them know that this is the tentative date, whether it be a culvert replacement or shoulder work, and Public Works will return it to the state we found it in. So if it's manicured, it will be topsoiled and seeded. We do not sod, just because we don't want the onus of watering sod, so we just seed. Other than that, any ditches that are proposed, of course, the homeowner is consulted, and then the slope of ditch will then be decided between Public Works and the homeowner, just for ease of grass cutting, or they may choose just to leave it natural. There's very different scenarios.
Excellent. Could we just have that then, those good practices reflected in the policy then? Because I really appreciate the level of customer service you're delivering in that regard, and I'd like to make sure we try to maintain as much of your good works in the document as possible.
Absolutely, we can incorporate that in the boulevard maintenance section.
Thank you. There was a section on street lights, and I'm sure council will recall that when we switched over to LED lighting, it came to light that, oops, we don't need to replace them as often, which is great. But in not replacing them, the arms weren't being inspected. And this policy does speak to lights being burnt out and the service levels for replacing burnt out lights and how many can be burnt out, but it doesn't mention service levels regarding arm inspections, especially now that we switched to LEDs that may not be inspected whenever because they don't burn out. Would it be appropriate to put that in this policy as well?
Mr. Fowler, I'll defer to you on this one.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we cannot include the arm infrastructure on streetlights. I know that with the new upgraded LED lights that we do have, they are a lot lighter, so there isn't a lot of tension and wear and tear, especially in a windstorm, that you would see from the old incandescent lights. So again, we haven't run into too many issues with arms failing. It's just basically the malfunction of the LED light.
I just remember that after we switched over, it was a surprise to find out that, oops, one of the unintended costs that we faced shortly after switching over was then having to hire people to go and do arm inspections, since the arm inspections weren't being done as part of regular light replacement. So I just wanted to capture that change in the policy. I noticed that the traffic counting, a comprehensive, township-wide traffic counts being done every 4 years. That just struck me as being a little more often than necessary, but can you help me understand what makes that necessary if we kind of know the growth of everything around us? Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 6 years, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but maybe you can help me understand why 4 years is the right amount.
The general reasoning behind that is so that it's done per one term of council. Because through that term of council, they're going to be making decisions on road improvements and changes to whatever approach you take in levels of service for various items pertaining to the road. So we want to make sure that each council has a relatively current set of data to base those decisions on, as opposed to, oh, well, the traffic counts were from 8 years ago or something, so they're no longer relevant, or, well, that was for those decisions, conditions have changed today. So it's basically so that you can have current data for one term of council.
Okay, that makes sense. And if our current plan is to have that work done next year, then based on a 4-year cycle, it would always be the year before it'd be every election year, so that we would have fresh numbers for the new council every time.
Correct. That's
Okay.
the objective. Yes.
Just a couple of questions on some of the notes that were added regarding ball diamond maintenance. It indicates that the infield will be surface dragged once daily, whereas a lot of other facilities, their maintenance is based on usage. Is it necessary to drag the diamond every day if it's not being used, or should we have a policy that's based on rentals and usage?
That could be clarified, Mr. Ballmer. Ideally, parks will drag the diamonds. We just go by previous years where there were a lot of ball diamond rentals, especially in the evening. So we just took it upon ourselves to make sure that the diamonds were dragged. The diamonds can be dragged anywhere between 7 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. So obviously there is the hazard that we drag a diamond, and then especially during the summer, maybe school kids may play on it before the actual leagues show up. So it's just also easier to keep up on the weed maintenance by dragging it every day, which is a 15-minute occurrence.
Oh, that helps me understand. Of course, it'd be like an outdoor riding ring for horses. If you don't continually drag it or harrow it, it grows into the grass. Similarly, with the weeding around the fences and the bleachers, we're looking at doing grass maintenance on an as-needed basis, but the requirement for the weed eating, at least in the ball diamonds, compared to even open areas, it's proposed to be done weekly as opposed to as needed. So help me understand then why we couldn't have the weed eating done on an as needed basis, similar to the open areas or the grass cutting, the ball diamonds, as opposed to on a weekly schedule.
The weekly weed trimming was identified in the ball diamonds from individuals that have expressed a desire to have a nice weed-free ball diamond and team area. So basically we are setting aside time for one individual to basically just watch the fence line, stay on top of them. You're not eliminating them, you're just keeping them at a respectable height. So as far as any other outdoor areas, whether it be soccer or just our natural green spaces, the same weeding procedures are also implemented there. It's one individual cut, the other will walk around and weed trim.
Yeah, and that was my point, is that the wording is different. One, for outdoor areas, it's weed eating as needed and grass is cut as needed, and the same with the ball diamonds, the grass is cut as needed, but the standard being proposed for the weed eating is weekly, with no requirement that it's done as needed. It's just done weekly, whether it needs it or not. And I just thought it seemed like an inconsistency across the 3 or 4 different types of.
Would it help if we said for the weed eating coincident with grass cutting as needed?
Yeah, yeah, it just made sense that then it's consistent with all the other stuff. And it seemed to stand out on its own there, that it was going to be done whether it needed it or not. And I only say that because we'll be held accountable to what it actually says by the public who reads the document. I noticed in the piece in the section for the PCC, I noticed stuff about the Alf Hales room, but I didn't see anything about the Archie McRobbie Hall, the kitchen, or the bar in terms of maintenance. And maybe that was an oversight on when it got converted for me or something.
The Alf Hales room was identified to be, we'll say, clean and sanitized, just for the reasoning of the Whistle Stop preschool, that they'll be using it the majority of the time during the week. Whether it be the Arch McRobbie or the commercial kitchen, that will all depend on the rental frequency. But again, everything will at least be gone over once, within a couple days of each other, but the emphasis was put on Alf Hales for the preschool.
That makes sense because that's it's used by a regulated use. So that makes perfect sense. I just noted that because other facilities were there and had their spaces identified, and this one didn't have all the spaces identified. So I didn't know if that was something staff wanted to look into. And I guess lastly on the ORC, similar to the grass cutting, I noted that the winter maintenance of the washrooms was to be done daily, but in the summer, the winter maintenance was supposed to be done as needed based on rentals. Is there a reason why the change rooms and washrooms need to be done? I guess it was the change rooms need to be done daily in the winter, but only as required in the summer? Or should that be, made the same,
Just to clarify that, the winter rentals require, because of the rink up and running, teams require the change rooms to change for their equipment, where the summertime rentals are more ball hockey, where they're not required to use as much equipment. They don't really need a place to shower afterwards. There's a definite discrepancy between ball hockey and ice hockey as far as time to prepare and change. That's why there's more frequency or added usage in the winter. Plus, if there's also a gym rental ongoing at the same time, the change rooms can be used a lot in the winter compared to the summer.
Understood and agree, but the policy says it's going to be done daily. Doesn't say anything about whether it's being rented or not. So if there's no rentals for a week, it still requires staff to go and clean it daily. That was my concern, is that the wording of it right now says that in the wintertime, the change rooms will be cleaned daily. Doesn't say, based on the rental schedule, but the summertime does say based on the rental schedule. Same for the gym. I'm just looking for consistency of application so we don't have staff cleaning facilities that haven't been used. You know what I mean?
Okay, so if we added in their similar wording, depending on use and rentals, that would address your concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Just so for consistency. Thank you very much. Good job. I really like the report. And as I said, I like the fact it's all pulled together in one place, easy to find, easy to read, and easy to understand.
Thank you. Councillor Goida?
Thank you. I agree. I actually really like this document. I find it very handy, and I feel like it's something that I might even myself refer to often. I have a couple quick questions. Under the winter control operations, it talks about depth and response times for the roads, but it not for the sidewalks, and maybe that's by design. And I know that at least in my neck of the woods over here, that the sidewalks are always cleaned off very quickly in the wintertime. But I'm just wondering, is there a standard for that, or is it, or what is the best practice, I guess, for that?
Public Works tries to mirror the sidewalk clearing frequency all along with our roads. So it will all depend on the operator's responsibility. So if that operator is in a plow, obviously the roads will be done first, but we try to have then the sidewalk machine mirror that truck within an hour or so of leaving the yard. So again, it's all about time management. So if we need a road and the sidewalk cleared before, say, 6 a.m. before school and pedestrians start, then we judge our job duties accordingly. But it will be within 1 to 2 hours of the last snowfall.
Okay, okay, under gravel surface maintenance, it talks about potholes, the routine grading, the spot grading, the dust of present, all those things. And then I think later on in the wordings, I think under the routine patrolling section, it talks about keeping record or writing it down or something like that. And I'm just wondering if specifically for the gravel roads, if there's any kind of like annual report that is produced from all of those repairs and things that happen on the gravel roads. I'm only asking that because that would probably be a very helpful piece of information to inform the roads master plan. And I guess I'm just asking what the procedure is in terms of keeping record of those types of maintenance on gravel roads.
Public Works currently keeps a weekly record of all road patrols, and which includes gravel roads. Once a grader operator goes out to perform any type of maintenance on gravel roads, it is documented at the end of the day. So we are pretty much 3/4 of the way there. All this information just hasn't been compiled to be produced at an end of year report.
Maybe one thing I could speak to add to that is, as Mr. Fowler just identified, we do keep records, but they're generally just a paper summary. So it doesn't facilitate easy to generate reports without going through and documenting each one of those. One of the things we're going to be looking at in the future when we have a chance to get to it is a more electronic way of compiling the inspection data. It's easier for the operators, once they get used to it and the training and equipment and that. But then it's much easier to do data collection, data analysis, and we can get right down to the specifics in there, and it's easily searchable. So that's something on the list for some time in the future, but we don't readily have that availability right now.
Yeah, fair enough. And then the last question is more just a clarification question. It is on page, I guess, 28 of 38. And it's the paragraph just before table 12. And the wording of it just does not make sense to me. It says, if it is determined by the township that the weather indicates that there is substantial probability of snow accumulation on roadways, ice formation on roadways, or icy roadways, the minimum standard for patrolling also included patrolling representative roadways. Now, I don't understand what that means.
Maybe I could answer that, and if I miss something, Mr. Farrell, you can jump in. Basically, what that means is when weather conditions dictate that, okay, there's storm event going on or certain type of weather that it necessitates doing a road patrol, they won't necessarily go and patrol each and every road of the whole township. What that is that they'll look at representative roads. So for example, if it's a north wind, they know that, okay, if it's a north wind, it normally drifts in these types of areas or these locations. So we're going to go take a look at that. And based on that, we'll allocate the resources. We're not going to go and travel all, whatever it is, 200 kilometers of road every day just for the sake of doing that. It's based on the conditions. Representative roads are selected based on what's happening that day.
Okay, okay. It's just the way it's worded is a little confusing, but I understand the meaning. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CAO, have you heard about this ruling from a Nelson, BC individual that broke their leg climbing over top of a snowbank, and this Supreme Court of Canada decision on that? And I don't,
Yes. Okay. Yes, I have, and I've been discussing that with a number of municipal colleagues already, and that does create some questions with the whole minimum maintenance standards thing. So from what I understand, both AMO and the Good Roads Association and AORS, the Roads Supervisors Association, they're all working together because those whole minimum maintenance standards are put together to protect the liability of municipalities. So basically, if you can maintain to this standard, then you're covered under your insurance policies. That ruling kind of stepped outside of that. So as I understand it, all these agencies are working together to address that, to see what the impacts are on minimum maintenance standards. So we're still in the same position as other municipalities now, but these collective groups are working together to see what those implications are going to be, if any.
I'm glad you're aware of it. That way, there'll possibly be some changes or adaptation to the township. I'm not real familiar with the whole circumstances, but for council's indulgence, I believe the situation was snow clearing activities had happened likely because of a snow event. Snow was piled up on the curb at the end of a parking spot or something, and the individual got out and climbed over the snow bank and broke their leg. And the Supreme Court held up or overturned a ruling, from my understanding, from a lower tier court that they weren't liable. The Supreme Court is saying that the municipality is liable. So the reason why I bring it up, I just wanted to make sure staff had it on their radar. So if they need to address our maintenance standards, and Brock Road comes into my mind, the amount of snow that we push onto the sidewalk. So sounds like Glenn's on it. Question for Mr. Fowler, and I apologize if I missed it in the report, but at the Ball Diamonds, there's facilities with washrooms. Is there a component in this for cleaning and inspection of the washrooms at the two Ball Diamonds? Well, no, the three Ball Diamonds. I guess the one's part of the ORC. But the standalone Ball Diamonds with washroom facilities, are they going to be cleaned and inspected as part of this policy?
Yes, of course. I apologize for omitting that. Ball Diamonds or washrooms are inspected once a week, regardless of rental or not, and they are cleaned after every rental the previous night.
Okay.
We'll incorporate that in there as well.
Yep. I guess, is this going to have to come back before us again, Mr. CAO, or could we adopt it with the comments from council today?
I'd feel comfortable adopting it, providing we incorporate the comments members of council provide to us. If you guys are comfortable with that, I think we could proceed.
Councillor Spoulos?
I'm fine with what you're suggesting, Mr. Mayor. Just provide the comments and let's assume the staff will incorporate them.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I'm okay with adopting them with the comments. I did wonder at some point, is Engage Puslinch, being involved with this, or is it something we and let be?
Typically, what we would do, Councillor Bailey, what I would suggest is, here's the level of service policy that is currently in place and approved. And then this is going to form a integral part of the start of each budget process, where basically we'll solicit council to say, do you want to change anything with regards to the service levels? And what we could do at that point in time is put something on Engage Puslinch and say, here's the approved level of service. Do you want, what's the public feedback? Do you want increases, decreases, additions, deletions, whatever? And then we could provide that to council for your consideration at the start of the next budget process as well. And that way it could be sort of a regular review through the community as well.
Yeah, I would like that. Great. Thanks a lot.
Councillor Balmer?
Yeah, I support the direction you're suggesting. I guess you need someone to make a motion to that effect.
Goida?
Yep, I would be in favor of that.
Somebody want to make a motion? Well, let's ask Ms. Hoytfox which resolution she had for this report.
So I did make a list, as council was discussing, of just the revisions. So I can forward that on to our CAO. But the resolution is just to receive the policy and that council adopts the policy, including the revisions as noted. And we can add to that Councillor Bailey's comment that staff include this policy on an annual basis on Engage Puss Lynch for feedback prior to the budget process.
Okay. All right, okay, and a mover for that, please. Councillor Spillis, seconder. Councillor Bailey. All right, all in favor, Councillor Spillis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Balmer,
Favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
I believe we're on confirmatory bylaw.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2021-060 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Puss Lynch at its meeting held on the 17th day of November 2021.
Need a mover for that, please? Councillor Goida?
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Spillis. All in favor, Councillor Spillis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey? Yeah, Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
and Councillor Goida.
In favor.
And adjournment, please.
Council hereby adjourns at 1:38 PM.
I move.
Seconded by Councillor Spillis. All in favor, Councillor Spillis,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
Favor.
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
And we're adjourned. Ms. White Fox,
work.
could you call me, please?
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day.